All right, welcome to the conversation on the TYT network, as all of our shows are. Okay, so we had the eviction moratorium showdown with Cori Bush, although of course Jen Psaki says it wasn't a showdown. We were all going to do the same thing until we had that protest for days and days and days, and then we got mortified and embarrassed and humiliated, and then we did it. I mean, Nancy Pelosi asked us to do it, and that's why we did it. Okay, whatever gets you through the night. We're gonna have on Max Burns. He's national political columnist at the Daily Beast. He's also the founder of Third Degree Strategies, a progressive communications firm. He does do progressive communications. He's about to do it right now. Hey, Max.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Good to see a progressive actually write articles in mainstream media. Okay, so Max, you wrote a lot about Democratic leadership here. On TYT, we've covered a lot about how, yeah, of course they weren't going to do it, and they got embarrassed by Cori, and then they did it. They did it because of that pressure. But you wrote about you named names, right? And one of the folks that you named was Barack Obama. And so some people might say, well, that's out of left field. He's not in government anymore, and the guy's about to have a lovely birthday party in Martha's Vineyard. What are you getting on him for? So why bring him into this?
Well, I'm definitely not getting invited to the birthday party now. I think what has been so shocking with Barack Obama, with Hillary Clinton, with other major figures, is their complete silence on these major issues facing the Democratic Party in the country. And people can say, well, Barack Obama is a private citizen. Barack Obama never said he was progressive, but he is the most respected figure in the Democratic Party. And for 12 years, the most respected politician in America. His voice moves markets, moves voters, and he knows that. And it's this inexplicable choice to remain silent on such an easy win for Democrats that has raised concern, not just among observers like me, but also among the activist left.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with is it's not at all inexplicable. It's Obama 101. The guy is obsessed with himself. And okay, everybody in mainstream media, go cry. I don't care. Okay. Oh, you can't say that about Barack Obama. He's a saint. I'm gonna smear you for the rest of your life. Okay. Yeah, I've never seen that dude ever put on his walking boots. He had that famous line about, oh my God, if there's a union in trouble, I'm gonna put on my walking boots. He's just never been able to find them. To be fair to him, he's got a lot of closets. It's a nice house. Tough to find those walking boots. But you made a great point. There's more senior Democrats going to that 60th birthday bash than there is that spoke out about this issue on television or anywhere else. Which goes to, I'm gonna stay on that, whether it's Obama or Clinton. Max, if we're being honest, they're just elites. I don't think they care at all. I've never seen Obama care about any of these issues. He thinks if he gets involved, what if he loses and that tarnishes his legacy? What if the politicians don't do what he wants and that tarnishes his legacy? What if he has to give a damn and that might tarnish his legacy? So me. What leads you to think that any of these Democratic leaders care about regular voters at all?
Well, at the moment, that's a tough sell for voters to believe. There just is no sense of urgency on things like the eviction moratorium, on rent stabilization, on things like the student loan freeze, on climate being protected in infrastructure. There has really been no driving force on this in Democratic Washington, except for the progressive left, except for the squad, except for people like Cori Bush, who have pushed and dragged the Democratic Party forward on issues that 60 to 70% of Americans support. And I have to ask myself, if Democrats aren't willing to get off the couch to win an issue that almost 70% of Americans support, that they can win with an executive order, what constitutes an easy enough fight for Democrats? I mean, this is just picking low-hanging fruit at this point, and Joe Biden had to be dragged into it by Cori Bush.
Yeah, I know what motivates them and will spring them into action, fighting a progressive. So those same folks, Hillary Clinton, Jim Clyburn, didn't give a damn about people being evicted, didn't do anything at all, right? But they're like, oh my God, Nina Turner, who actually agrees with Cori Bush on this issue, what if she wins? Then she might also embarrass us us corporate goons. So they spent all their time making sure that Nina Turner lost that race. So, but Max, when you look, those things are, when you see the facts are so obvious. Like Clyburn didn't do anything to help people who were gonna get evicted. But he's all over the news attacking Nina Turner, and congratulations to him, he defeated progressives again. You realize that the problem isn't the corporate Democrats. They're very obvious and brazen. They don't give a damn at all. None of their actions have ever indicated that they give a damn. The problem is the media.
Yeah.
The media goes, oh no, Nina Turner is less Democratic than Chantel Brown. Obama and Hillary Clinton are saints, but Cori Bush is kind of embarrassing Democratic leadership. Ooh, no, she's not a team player, right? So isn't it the Praetorian Guard, the corporate media, the problem here in getting people the correct information?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's bizarre. It is bizarre the way that resources are being wasted here. Millions of dollars went into Ohio 11, millions and millions of dollars in dark money to defeat Nina Turner. And that money could have gone to a messaging campaign to support rent relief that 67% of Americans support, to support student loan forgiveness that almost 80% of Americans support. Instead, that money was all spent on ammunition to shoot within the party. And in doing so, I think establishment Democrats have fallen into the same thing they accuse the left of, which is saying that the left can talk a big game, but they can't get things done. When in reality, the only things that have been meaningfully done in Congress this term have come because progressives pushed for it. So this focus on progressives must be failing because Nina Turner lost disguises the fact that if not for progressives, there would be almost no legislation coming out of this Congress.
Yeah, so speaking of money, let's talk about how that affects the eviction issue. So the Democratic Party has gotten millions of dollars from real estate interests. So there's a great article at the Daily Post written by David Sirota about exactly how much money, and including a late check from a real estate mogul gave $1 million in June to the House Democratic Caucus. And lo and behold, there's apparently a dozen Democrats who are conservative corporate Democrats who are going to benefit from that money, who are against lifting the moratorium. And so, number one, shouldn't everybody be talking about the real reason Democrats didn't take this action, which is that they got paid not to take the action? And then I'll get to number two, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think this should surprise Democrats. I think Democrats, establishment Democrats, were not prepared for how effectively Cori Bush turned her protest into a national media moment. And at this point, that's really their own fault. The progressive left did the exact same thing to push Joe Biden to raise the refugee cap back in April, and he did that. They used the same tactic again on the eviction moratorium and won again. This idea coming forward that progressives can't govern, that the establishment is the way to get things done, has been shown to be a fraud again and again. And now that Cori Bush and AOC and others are talking about this follow the money approach of looking at who's backing these votes against extending moratoriums, who's backing these politicians who support the student loan industry. Now the elites are getting very nervous because that's not a fight that they're going to look good fighting.
Yeah, and so Nancy Pelosi pretended that, oh golly gee, if we could, we obviously would have extended it. But that's not at all obvious. You didn't vote on it, and you chose not to vote on it because you actually would have lost, because the conservative Democrats would have joined the Republicans. So isn't this a bit of kabuki theater here, as they say Biden now under great pressure extended the moratorium, and that buys them time to pass a bill. But Max ain't gonna pass a bill.
Yeah, I think this is a moment where Nancy Pelosi's tacking to the right of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden asked the House to stay and continue negotiating this, continue to push forward and try and get a deal on the eviction moratorium. Nancy Pelosi said no. She said we've got to go on vacation. She didn't even bother to try that approach. And that's a pretty, I don't know if I would say courageous, but that's certainly a pretty bold position to tell the president of the United States that this policy priority isn't worth the House's time. And I think given the response we've seen from Cori Bush's protest, Nancy Pelosi's greatly regretting how she's being perceived right now. And that's an entirely unforced error on her part.
All right, Max Burns, actually writing Truth, in this case, the Daily Beast. So Max, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Anytime, thank you.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning.
She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries.
Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to the Happy Half Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word. Okay. This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually gonna show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
All right, back on the conversation. So we've been talking a lot about the eviction moratorium, not just because it's a really important issue with 1 out of every 6 renters potentially getting kicked out of their house soon, but also because it shows you really interesting divide within the Democratic Party. It kind of exposes it. And we want to talk about the legal aspect of it a little bit here and more about the political division. So we're going to bring in Joseph Zabayos-Roy here. He's the economic policy reporter at Insider. Joseph, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So first, before we get to the difference between the Biden administration and progressives on this, let's just set the scene legally for this. So they pass well, let me ask you, how did we get to the eviction moratorium in the first place?
So last year, the Trump administration put in place a moratorium to kind of help keep people in their homes. This was in September. It was renewed, once more under the Biden administration, and then set to expire on July 30th. It was done through the CDC, and the legal argument in this case was to keep people in their homes to prevent the spread of the virus. And, courts have held that until we reached like a critical juncture in the summer when we had like a narrow 5-4 decision, and it's the Supreme Court basically ruled at that point that the moratorium could continue for only one more month, and then what the administration was really kind of looking at was Kavanaugh's opinion, in which he said that any authorization to renew it past July 30th would need to be done through Congress.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I understand the basis for Kavanaugh's opinion on that. It's not binding. They didn't decide a case. It's just it has no legal force. But I don't know that if you know this answer, Joseph, but if it was done through the CDC and the executive branch, why is Kavanaugh's opinion that they should pass a law even relevant? Well, they didn't pass a law. The CDC did it. It's an executive branch decision in the middle of a pandemic. Is Kavanaugh going to decide the pandemic is over unilaterally and overrule the executive branch as part of the judicial branch? Is that the issue here?
I think that was the administration's main concern in terms of not extending it. They punted it to Congress basically 2 or 3 days before it was set to end, and I think the administration really did want to avoid like a legal showdown with the Supreme Court on this, because they were also concerned that if they were to rule against the extension of the moratorium, the Supreme Court, given its slight conservative tilt at this point, could move to narrow more of their public health authorities in the executive branch. So I think the administration was clearly spooked by the idea of a negative ruling and a potentially sweeping one that could really constrain its power to fight the pandemic.
So there's no question the administration is lying about something. Okay, and I'll tell you why. So on the one hand, they said in the beginning, oh my God, we got no legal authority to do this. And then a couple of days later, they said, okay, we found legal authority. Okay, so either they always knew there was legal authority and they didn't really want to do it because the campaign donations they're getting from real estate companies and private equity companies that invest in the real estate, or they thought they didn't have the legal authority, and then when they were embarrassed by Cori Bush, they came out and said, oh no, we weren't embarrassed by Cori Bush. We'd always planned to do it. But here, I'm gonna read you a quote from your own piece, Joseph, and then react within that context. The White House advisor Gene Sperling had said on Monday, the president has not only not kicked the tires, he has double, triple, quadruple checked and was unable to find the legal authority. Well, okay, if he quadruple checked, was it the quintuple check that did it a couple of days later?
Yeah, I was just about to say they clearly quintuple checked on this, but I think part of the administration's pretty startling reversal on this had to do with Congresswoman Cori Bush. She led a very critical movement to ramp up pressure on the administration and on Democrats too to do something about the moratorium. The problem on the legislative side was that Democrats simply didn't have the votes to do it, through the House or the Senate. The House tried to do it, a day before the moratorium ended. That fell through. They didn't have any Republican support in the Senate to renew the moratorium. So it really fell on the administration to do something about it. And they were really resistant at first, but Cori Bush spent 4 nights on the steps of the Capitol. Lots of progressive figures. AOC came out in support. Bernie Sanders, even Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, came out to show, backing for what Cori Bush was doing. So, it reached a point in which, the political pressure just became impossible for the administration to ignore. And, on the quintuple check, they had to act.
Yeah, I loved Mondaire Jones' quote about it. He said, it's odd, I think, to raise issues about the constitutionality of your own executive action shortly before making that executive action. So not something you normally do. Joseph, I have a theory. They didn't really want to win. They never actually intended to continue the moratorium. Cori Bush embarrassed them into doing it. They just wanted to take the real estate money. But when they said that they had no legal authority to do it, they kind of set themselves up for a win-win, because now, since if I'm right, and they never wanted to continue the moratorium in the first place, because now if it does go to the court, it's going to be an easy decision for the court, right? The court's going to say, well, the executive branch told us they have no legal authority, and then they did it anyway. So now Biden has guaranteed he's going to lose in the courts. Is that a fair reading of it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one fair reading of it for sure. I mean, it was pretty remarkable that, but the President Biden, before he, the CDC, he was hinting that the CDC would come out with like a decision on a moratorium within hours. He gave he was speaking at a press conference about the pandemic, and he was asked about this, and he kind of undercut his own administration's legal footing by saying that he spoke to some scholars who didn't think they would pass legal muster, others who did. And then, he basically hinted that, even if it's struck down, it would basically buy time for the rental relief program, which, has 46, had allocated 46 billion, only $3 billion has gone out the door, buy time for that money to reach, renters who desperately need the money to be able to stay in their homes. So, like progressives clearly on this issue noticed that, and I think they're fairly noting that the administration has not done itself a service here by undercutting their own ruling before the CDC released it.
So now, look, they did wind up extending the moratorium because of the pressure. So that's great. So they bought themselves some time, because remember, the renters might not have the money, but the good news is, as Joseph just pointed out, that Congress allocated it so they can go get relief. That was a whole part of the point of all of these COVID relief bills, right? So they bought time, but there's 2 possibilities for what happens in that time. One is, Congress comes in as Kavanaugh, halfway directed, passes a bill to extend the moratorium for longer, because it turns out we're still definitely in the middle of the pandemic with the Delta variant raging, et cetera, right? Well, let's talk about that. Is that possible?
To get the money out before the moratorium expires, you mean?
No, that's the second option. The first option is actually passing a bill to extend the moratorium.
Oh, passing the bill at this point just seems impossible for Democrats. I mentioned a little bit earlier that, House Democrats tried to, muster the votes for a bill. That didn't happen. A couple dozen or 1 dozen House moderates balked at the idea of any extension. And, House Democrats have like a 3-vote majority. So, that effort completely collapsed. And Pelosi even said today that, she decided against the idea of like a recorded vote because she knew she was going to lose. And as she put it, she doesn't go to the floor to lose. And, it's been reported too that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, along with Pelosi, approached, President Biden at the White House and told him they simply did not have the votes to pass the moratorium. I mean, even a couple of Democrats I talked to in the days leading up to the moratorium and after were a little bit skeptical about the idea of renewing it. It seemed like they needed more convincing, but the support even among Democratic ranks is just not there at this point.
Right. So there goes their theory that, we were gonna do it. I mean, before Cori did the protest, they were this close to doing it. No, you were never gonna do it. So that's another obvious lie by Democratic leadership. But it does buy them time to actually disperse the funds, right? So how would that work, Joseph?
Right. So, states, this program has been in place since December of last year. It has $46 billion, designed to reach renters. The problem is that, there's not really a national apparatus to, get this relief out to renters. States and cities have had huge problems trying to, stand up these programs. And lots of renters have not been able to access it. Only $3 billion out of that $46 billion has reached renters. And a lot of the problems are stemmed from, slow rollout, onerous paperwork requirements. And sometimes in some cases, landlords just simply refuse the money and move to evict. So, I think it's going to be a really big hurdle for the Biden administration to get the other $43 billion of, rental aid out in only 2 months. So they're going to have to kick the tires and try and do something about it for sure.
Joseph, thank you for joining us. Appreciate a good article and insider about it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jane Huger, Anna Kasparian with you guys. I've made a bit of a pledge to try to be nicer to Republicans. They are going to test me today. Okay, so we have a story that will greatly test me.
I got news for you. They're gonna test you every day.
They really are. Okay, so another interesting part of today's show is we have the story that will determine if there has been any change at all in Congress, or if it's the same old, same old. We don't have the answer today, but we have the thing that will decide the answer today. So lots of interesting things in today's show. So I got a great idea. Why don't we start it and let's see what happens?
Yes, let's start with literally the most important story, not just of the day, but probably of our lifetimes. Yeah. And it has to do with climate change. A new report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change indicates that the global temperatures are actually set to rise beyond the global limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. That was the limit that was agreed on during the Paris Climate Accord. And the results of that are going to be absolutely devastating, but more importantly, the ramifications that we're already experiencing in this rapidly warming climate has already been incredibly devastating. So the outcome of this report indicates that we need widespread, rapid action in order to mitigate some of the most devastating impacts of climate change and at least slow down the rapid nature of the climate warming. So as Dr. Frederick Otto from the University of Oxford said, he's one of the authors of this IPCC report, climate change is not a problem of the future. It is here and now and affecting every region in the world. The findings of the study indicate that carbon pollution has risen to such extremes that a key threshold in the fight to stop climate change, and that's limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century, will be crossed within 15 years. So I want to go to this video, which features the environmental reporter for the German outlet Deutsche Welle, and he explains what this report means in greater detail. Let's watch.
So what's the message then to governments around the world?
So world leaders pledged the Paris Agreement in 2015. They pledged to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures, and ideally to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And this 1.5 degrees C target, that's going to be broached in the next 20 years or so. And in all the scenarios that they consider, that these models kind of look at, in all of these scenarios except for one of them, they stay above 1.5, they keep getting worse. And the one in which we do manage to bring things back down by the end of the century and kind of meet this 1.5 degrees C target, that involves rapidly decarbonizing the economy and sucking enormous amounts of CO2 out of the atmosphere. And governments so far aren't doing that.
None of which we're doing.
Now, the key word there was governments, because this isn't just about the United States, although the United States has failed miserably in responding to climate change and changing human behavior. But this is something that we need collaboration on. This is something that we need to work with other countries on. And with the United States failing to even do its part, things are looking pretty grim because we need rapid action and we need it now. We need to decarbonize right now. And honestly, we're barely even headed in that direction.
Yeah, he sounded a bit like Dr. Strange there, talking to Tony Stark. I run all the scenarios. There's only one scenario in which we win. But unlike the Marvel comic universe, in the actual human-run universe, we're screwed. We're not gonna do that scenario. What does that scenario involve, by the way? Nearly ending all fossil fuels. We gotta go, we have to stop right now. Now, of course, in America, because half of our politicians are paid to manufacture doubt, and our media feels under some obligation to call things 50-50. They've gotten better on climate change, so they're calling it 75-25. They have manufactured enough doubt through their propaganda for you to go, oh my God, end fossil fuels, that's crazy. I mean, there's coal jobs in West Virginia. There's like, we would have more jobs if we switched to solar, that's a fact. They would pay higher, that's a fact. But you never heard any of that. Oh my God, you're gonna cost jobs in West Virginia and Ohio or wherever else. There's no way we can do that. No, you're not getting it. Here in America, we're in a bubble. We're literally in a propaganda bubble. The rest of the world gets it, and they can't believe we're not taking action. Unfortunately, some of the powerful in other countries like China barely get it because it's all about short-term profits, short-term gain. Meanwhile, we are unquestionably burning down the planet. But again, I go back to my wife's comment on this. The planet will be fine. It'll shake us off, and then it'll recover, and then new life will spring. But we're endangering our own existence in such a material way that they will look back at this time in history and go, that was stunning. It shows you the incredible power of human greed. It just is unstoppable, even when we're facing our own extinction.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned China, because China, of course, is part of this equation. So is Russia. So in China, they rely heavily on coal. In Russia, there's a reliance on natural gas, which of course emits methane into the atmosphere, which is incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and only further accelerates climate change. And look, we're seeing the consequences of climate change today with wildfires, not just in the United States. I mean, in Turkey right now, the wildfires are out of control.
Yeah, the fires are out of control. I'm not sure how naturally occurring they were in Turkey.
Right.
With 12 fires seemingly lit in 12 different places at once. So,
oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, but we're not positive about that. It's a complicated international issue. But once they start, of course, they're very hard to control because of climate change.
Right.
And so, look, I know. Everybody's got their own agenda. So the Chinese blame the Americans blame the Chinese. You mentioned Russia, people scream Russiagate, right? And everything will be blamed on American imperialism and sometimes on the right things, right? So is it runaway capitalism? Yeah, it's partly that, for sure. Because the stock market says, what are you talking about? I want 15% growth every quarter, every year. I don't care how you get it, and you will be judged on short-term profits. So it is incredibly hard to get off that treadmill, and power never concedes without a demand. And apparently our demand has not been sizable enough and forceful enough. And I mean politically, of course. And look, there are people like progressives, like Justice Democrats in Congress that are demanding it. This is gonna connect to another issue we're gonna talk about later in the show, which is the $3.5 trillion budget deal. They used to call it the infrastructure deal, but now people are playing politics and they're calling it the budget deal. Anyway, the bottom line is it has a little bit of Green New Deal in there. It needs to have a lot of it, but hey, it's a really good start. If we don't do that deal, then America is saying we're out. Yep. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat. We're never gonna do anything. We're obsessed with money. We're obsessed with donors. We will take no action, and we will actively burn down the planet. And by the way, including the state of California, the most prosperous state in America, is now being burnt to an absolute crisp. And it happens because of the same things. Corporate donors from PG&E giving money to politicians so they never regulate them. Climate change has made the trees like literal tinder and dry tinder. And so Siberia is on fire. We're all in great, great peril. But when you tell, look, last thing on this for me, when you tell right wingers in this country, and again, if you live outside of America, it's hard to believe, right? But if you tell them here that 99% of the world's scientists agree, it is definitely man-made, right? And we can show you the graphs here to prove it, right?
Let's put the first graph
up. It's definitely real and it's definitely man-made. They say, no, we don't believe in your stinking numbers and scientists are evil. And so we have to debate them on whether science is real before we're gonna take action on this graph. Look at that graph, that it has already happened.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening to the audio version of the show, you see this massive spike in rising temperatures or rising climate of course, in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So beginning in the mid 1800s specifically, you start seeing that graph spike up, which obviously it shows the clear connection to human behavior. And real quick, I also think it's important to just quickly mention the methane component of this, because the report specifically focused on moving away from coal, but also moving away from drilling for natural gas, which is what emits methane into the atmosphere. They find that as the world shifts away from fossil fuels and tackles air pollution, those aerosols will disappear. There are certain aerosols that it's pollution, but it helps to reflect the sun's light, so the planet doesn't warm as quickly, right? But as we start dealing with fossil fuels, some of those aerosols who kind of, that have that effect might also disappear. So that might seem counterintuitive, right? But while also improving the air quality, said IPCC report summary author Maisa Rojas Corradi, an atmospheric scientist at the University of Chile. Now, on a global scale, methane emissions are responsible for around 30% of warming since the pre-industrial era, and that's according to the United Nations. So what they're saying here is, look, methane acts a little differently because it remains in the atmosphere far longer than CO2. Right, it has a similar impact, but it's harder to get rid of from the atmosphere. So they're talking about how you need to do something about fracking, you need to do something about drilling for natural gas, because that's having a far more severe negative impact on the environment than previously known. That was the other finding of this report.
So I want to add one thing to that, and then show you the second chart that I was alluding to. So a lot of the methane is trapped in the Arctic ice caps. And when the ice caps melt, the methane then goes in the atmosphere. You cannot get that back and put it back in the ice caps. The damage becomes irreversible. And it's, again, not in the future, it's happening now. It's happening now. So we're totally screwed. So let's show the second one. We already showed you the chart where it's going through the roof. This is similar, but the blue line in this chart shows you what would have happened if human drivers were not taken into account, what the normal pattern would have been given everything else that the planet is experiencing. The red line shows you what humans have done. And so, but yet people see these kind of charts in America and they say, I think the thermostat is lying. I think scientists are making up numbers all across the world, and they just don't believe it. And there's no getting them to believe it. So we're frozen into inaction because the oil companies and coal companies purchase our politicians in America. That's bribery is legal, and then they manufacture doubt in enough of the electorate so that they can maintain their seats and their power. So $3.5 trillion, that's the deal. If that deal doesn't pass, honestly, the entire planet is screwed.
Well, speaking of the planet being screwed, let's take a look at the Dixie Fire, give you guys an update on that. The massive Dixie Fire in Northern California is now the state's largest standalone fire in history, as it spread to more than 700 square miles just over the weekend. The fire has destroyed small towns in the region, several of them, including Greenville and Canyon Dam. And as of August 8th, the fire destroyed or damaged at least 589 structures, with 14,000 more threatened as a result of this fire. Now, it's important to talk about what sparked this fire, but before we do, of course, a huge part of what has exacerbated the fire, what has led to the conditions that's made this fire so disastrous and difficult to contain, is of course climate change. Now, as of late Sunday night, it had scorched almost 765 square miles south of Sacramento. That's more than 2.5 times the size of New York City. It's been burning for 25 days and was only 21% contained. And I just want to talk a little bit about how dry the conditions are, because as we've talked about on the show before, the West is dealing with a drought right now. It is a severe drought, and that creates conditions that are perfect for this kind of fire, for a fire that's completely out of control and difficult to contain. In fact, Mark Burton, who is with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, says, quote, "The live trees that are out there now have a lower fuel moisture than you would find when you go to a hardware store or lumber yard and get a piece of lumber that's kiln dried." So basically firewood. The live trees are drier than literal firewood. It's that dry, so it doesn't take much for any sort of embers, sparks, or small flaming front to get that going. And what sparked this? Well, I'll give you more details in just a minute, but just know that the private utility company, PG&E, and its awful equipment, which they have failed to upgrade for nearly a century, is likely to have sparked this fire. So another fire that has destroyed entire communities that has been sparked allegedly by PG&E, and I'll give you more details to that in just a second.
So corporate negligence is leading to the fires, and corporate negligence and malfeasance and corruption is making the fires worse. So the first half is through the utilities, and the second half is through the fossil fuel companies donating to politicians for inaction. So the largest fire recorded in California history is last year. The second largest is this year, and by the way, it's only 21% contained. So we'll probably beat the record, unfortunately. And the 20 biggest fires in California history happened in the last 20 years, almost all of them. So climate change is not only real, it's here. It's not later, it's right now. When fires wipe out whole towns at a time in the most prosperous state in America, what would be, I think, the 5th largest economy in the world, one of the richest places on earth, and we're powerless to stop the fires because it's Mother Nature and it isn't playing. We have no chance at stopping these fires. And have we made enough money in California? Yes. Is it ever enough for the greedy? No, it's never enough. I'm gonna make another $1 billion, fossil fuel executives and shareholders say. Meanwhile, everything's gonna burn down. Look, in the last, or one of the sets of fires over the last couple of years, the Kardashians, they weren't alone, but they were a flamboyant example of it, started hiring private fire departments for extra protection for the rich, because the rich are burning down the planet. So it's okay, they can save themselves with extra privatized fire departments. And the rest of it, Greenville, you couldn't save yourself because your entire town was burnt to the crisp.
No, what's incredible about this is you're right in that the largest fires in California history, the 20 largest fires in California history, happened over the last 20 years. We know that this continues to be a huge problem. So climate change is an issue. Privatized, deregulated, greedy private enterprise is a problem, clearly. And then you got the third issue, right? And the third issue is that we don't have enough firefighters in California.
That's a great point.
And that is not a mistake. That is by design, because the state of California would rather rely on prison labor in order to fight these fires. You literally have prisoners on the front lines fighting these fires. And this is how California saves money. Why are we gonna hire enough professional firefighters to deal with this? And by the way, those people, those prisoners who later get out of prison and they want to be firefighters, they can't, they won't get hired. They won't get hired because they have a felony on their record. That's the sick system that we're living in. But I want to tell you more about the sick system, because as I mentioned, PG&E, a private utility company, is likely to blame for what sparked this latest fire. And prosecutors have launched an investigation into PG&E's involvement in this Dixie fire because the fire is burning parts of Plumas and Butte counties. Both are involved in this investigation. Butte County prosecutors successfully convicted PG&E before of starting the Camp Fire and of 84 felony counts of manslaughter as a result of that fire. Now, PG&E actually ended up reporting to the California Public Utilities Commission that its equipment may have been involved in the start of the big Dixie fire. And earlier this year, PG&E vice president said on camera that PG&E power lines started the 2019 Kincaid fire, which injured 4 people and destroyed hundreds of homes in Sonoma County. CAL FIRE also said in a report this year that the deadly Zog fire in 2020 was sparked after a pine tree hit PG&E distribution lines. These lines should obviously be underground. The fact that they're above ground is a huge problem. That's very clear. But PG&E isn't going to spend the money necessary to update their equipment and do the right thing. You would need regulation. You would need actual leadership on a state level to make that happen. Are we going to get that state leadership? Of course not. Gavin Newsom has taken campaign contributions from PG&E. So have the Democratic lawmakers in this state. But don't worry, PG&E and Gavin Newsom want to ensure that you don't focus on them. And I always wondered, why does Gavin Newsom talk about climate change so much? I mean, he clearly doesn't care about climate change because he keeps allowing for more and more permits for drilling. right?
Over 8,000 so far.
Over 8,000, exactly. The reason why he wants to focus on climate change is because that's his way of deflecting from his personal role in allowing PG&E to get away with murder, literally. I mean, it's insane.
Well, there's three culprits, and I'll run through them quickly. First, it's one of them is triggered by a comment in our member section. Go to tyt.com/join and do the show with us. The good doctor wrote in, I get that the planet is on fire, but Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss. So that's culprit number one is the right wing who says, don't worry about it. Worry about Dr. Seuss books,
Mr. Potato Head.
Exactly, and so, and when you tell them, look, 99% of the world's scientists agree about climate change, they go, no, science is garbage. Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump have it all figured out. So that's the folks we're dealing with here, and that's why we're frozen into inaction. Now, but let's go over to the Democrats. They're just as bad in a lot of ways. There's good progressives now that are Democrats that actually do care and they don't take any corporate PAC money. So they're the only unbribed politicians in this whole country. They're the only ones, that's why they're the only ones fighting for us. But the corporate Democrats, which is the majority of Democrats, are horrible. Gavin Newsom is an excellent example of that. He goes and takes a hero picture in Greenville after it's already burnt to the ground. And he's like looking like this into the distance. You know, he's doing blue steel into the distance as if he cares. And Greenville will be with you. No, it's too late. Greenville's gone. What do you mean we're gonna be with you? Your buddies at PG&E burnt it to the ground. There is no more, hey, we'll be with you, Greenville. It literally doesn't exist, okay? So why do I say his buddies at PG&E? Throughout his political career, Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, has taken $10 million from PG&E. Those are all bribes, and they got exactly what they paid for. They got a corrupt politician like Gavin Newsom that let him get away with, if we're being honest about it, murder. They were convicted of it. So it's not hyperbole. In this case, there was a conviction that the PG&E's negligence led to the deaths of those 84 people. And now more people are dying. And yet, when Gavin Newsom was asked about all the campaign donations that he's taken from PG&E and the non-regulation that he's done of them, he's let them run wild.
That's right. He bailed them out. He bailed them out. He bailed them out. He bailed PG&E out.
Guys, you have to understand something. You can't have the wires out. It has to be buried. You can't have them on the like the post that we have now, right? Trees fall on them, and in this case, in this fire, it looks like a tree fell on one of the wires, which is literally the most predictable thing on earth. Everybody knows that's why in Europe they bury the wires, right? And PG&E says yes, but that'll cost me a little extra money, and what costs me less money is bribing Gavin Newsom and almost every other Democrat, and certainly all the Republicans. That costs me a lot less money, and corruption works. And so now the last culprit is the media. Did you know, other than our show, that PG&E had bribed Gavin Newsom $10 million? Does anybody else call it a bribe? No, very few outlets that reported say it's campaign contributions. It's okay, Supreme Court legalized bribery, so it's okay. It's not okay, it's not okay. When those corporations give a politician money, especially that much money, every actual person knows that's a bribe. Why is it that our media are the only ones who purposely lie to you and say, no, it's not a bribe? No, Gavin Newsom is not at fault. Gavin Newsom is a wonderful, amazing Democrat who cares about climate change.
Look, he's talking about climate change. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, why do you go along with his fraud? What, like, so today he's out there sweeping up trash that the homeless left behind, I believe, in Berkeley, okay? And again, hero shot, he's like throwing away garbage and he's like, yeah, man, blue steel the whole way. And the press doesn't go, hey, you schmuck, you're the one that caused this mess. They just put it out there like, oh, Gavin Newsom, he is helping so much with the homeless and with climate change because he said so. And I work for him, so I wrote it down. So all of you are tricked into it. By the way, as we say this now, Gavin Newsom's in the middle of a recall effort, and if the press gets word of what we're saying, they will yell at us and say, oh, I guess you're trying to hurt Democrats, huh? Hey, idiots, you're in the press. You're not supposed to be partisan. You're giving away the game, okay? We hate that game, we don't play that game. That's why the media can't stand us. They're like, how dare you say that about a beloved Democrat? Well, I just said it. He's terribly corrupt, and he's gotten himself into this mess of a recall, which isn't gonna make anything better, because if a Republican comes out winning, the situation is gonna get even worse. And that's the state of America and California as we have it. If you hear anything else from the mainstream media, as usual, they're lying to help the powerful.
We're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll give you an update on where we're at with the bipartisan infrastructure deal and also the reconciliation version of that deal, which Cenk rightly called the now budget deal, because that's what they're calling it in Congress. So we'll be back with that story and more. Stick around.
Hey guys, back on the social break here. Let's go to members real quick. Max's mama writes in, received my new laptop. Now I don't have to watch TYT on my phone. Hope everyone's doing well. Well, I love that news. So hey, on your laptop. Yeah, we're doing okay. Daniel Labiqua writes in, I love this. It's long, but it's great. It's a tyt.com/join to become a member. Those are the comments I read first. Hi, Cenk and Anna. It's always good to see you. I've been wanting to share the story behind my name change with you. I used to be Danielle LGBTQIA. A couple of months ago, Cenk read my resub anniversary message and called me Danielle Labiqua. From that point on, Brett started calling me Labiqua, and it stuck. So about a month ago, I officially changed my name to Danielle Labiqua.
What?
My mispronunciations are actually affecting the planet. Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. Continuing, I'm so glad to finally be able to share this with you. I love you and Anna so much and all my TYT family. And I could not make it in this crazy world without every single one of you. TYT, best family ever. Well, Danielle, you're amazing. You're amazing. We love you too. And we love your courage and everything else that went along with that. That's just an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it. TYT Forest Gnome writes in, I'm just gonna say it, F West Virginia's ridiculous fondness for coal. And by the way, again, it's not about effing West Virginia. We would help West Virginia if we transition them from coal to solar. Those jobs pay better and there are more of them. Those are facts. Worst case scenario, Dragon writes in, are any of these fires natural? Maybe some fool in Turkey had a gender reveal party. Okay, I don't know about that and I don't want to get into it because I don't know enough details about it, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't from a gender reveal party. The infamous Mr. Joyboy says, since according to Mitt Romney, corporations are people too, was PG&E charged, put on trial, and if convicted, sent to jail? Now, of course, they were not, and none of their executives were sent to jail. They all got away with it. Of course, in fact, they made tons of money doing it. Gee, I wonder why people do it. And now, correction here, John Paul III pointed this out. We're gonna point it out at the beginning of the next break. Quick note, methane stays in the atmosphere for around 12 years compared to over 100 years of CO2, but it is much more potent, just a quick clarify. Thank you, John. Thank you for holding us, keeping us honest, doing a fact check on us, and you're right, and I love it, and I love that you know that. So it's just a misstatement. We'll do the official correction when we come back. Now, Arthur Ashbrook asked a question I'm not gonna have time for, so Arthur, save it, come back. twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. We extended the Christmas sale for one more day, so jump on it now if you can. All right, we'll be back. back on TYT. Really important stories in today's show, including there's a hilarious one about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, but really important ones on infrastructure and lobbyists. But first, Anna's got a quick correction.
Yes, we were talking about the IPCC report on climate change, and I mixed a few things up, and I wanted to make sure that I clarified any misinformation. So when you're looking at CO2 and methane, they both, of course, contribute to climate change, but they're a little different. And the report did dive into that and also give some clarity on how important it is to move away from methane as well, or habits that release methane into the atmosphere. So look, while methane and CO2 warm the atmosphere, the two greenhouse gases are not the same. A single CO2 molecule causes less warming than a methane molecule, but lingers for hundreds of years in the atmosphere, whereas methane disappears within 2 decades. But with that said, the report does suggest that it's incredibly important to move away from methane causing activity as well. The report puts a lot of pressure on the world to step up its game on methane. Cutting methane is the single biggest and fastest strategy for slowing down warming.
Okay, it just roughly speaking, methane is 80 times more potent than CO2. But as you can tell, as Anna said, CO2 lasts longer. That's a correction. If we were other parts of the media, we of course wouldn't do that. We'd say, no, China hacked into the methane. And we've got it right all along. That's what my pillow says.
I know, but we never get credit for anything, so it doesn't matter. Let's just move on.
Okay, that's well. You know what? Methane wouldn't come on the show. Methane wouldn't come on the show, so we had to say what we said.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, let's give you guys an infrastructure update. Over the weekend, the Senate pushed the bipartisan infrastructure bill over another hurdle. And of course, that is the legislative filibuster. Now, that requires 60 votes in the Senate in order to pass any piece of legislation, with a few exceptions on reconciliation bills. Now, senators easily overcame another 60-vote hurdle on a vote of 68 to 29. As many as 20 Republicans are expected to join Democrats in the early or evenly split Senate for what could be a robust final tally. If approved, it would go to the House. So I want to be clear in stating something that I hope we've been clear on so far. The Senate infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, is different from what's being referred to as the reconciliation infrastructure bill, or what some are now referring to as the budget bill, which we'll get to in just a second. But moving back to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which of course allocates an additional $550 billion in new spending. The Senate could pass the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill as early as Tuesday morning, Tuesday of this week. The plan, which calls for $550 billion in new spending on transportation, utilities, and broadband, is expected to get through the chamber with Democratic and Republican support. Now, it didn't pass easily, or this overcoming this hurdle did have a few hiccups. So I'm just gonna go to one video featuring Ted Cruz and the shenanigans he engaged in, where he thought he was making a good point, but as usual, only embarrassed himself. Let's watch.
As Admiral Akbar said in Star Wars, it's a trap. This is a trap. This is a trap. Now listen, for Democrats, it's what they campaign on. If you're a Democrat, you want to raise taxes and raise spending. You want more debt from China. That's what Democrats do. But for Republicans, come on, guys. We're like Charlie Brown with Chuck Schumer being Lucy in the football. And you've got Republicans happily running, going, oh, he's gonna keep the football, he's gonna keep the football. And every time Lucy pulls the football up back, and we go up in the air and land in our rear. It'd be nice for Republicans not to fall for it again.
So Ted Cruz feels that this is a trap because voting in favor of the bipartisan infrastructure deal paves the way for the passage of the reconciliation infrastructure bill, which includes everything that we actually care about. The human infrastructure components, funding for childcare, elder care, free community college, the honestly more robust version of the infrastructure deal. Now, Cenk, I wanted to get your thoughts on what Ted Cruz said there, but more importantly, like this strategy. Like, do you think that Democrats are handling this appropriately, right? There seems to be this notion that they're definitely gonna pass a reconciliation bill, but I don't really see a clear strategy with the exception of progressives standing in the way, saying that they'd block the bipartisan bill unless there's a clear path forward for reconciliation. What do you think?
So good news is we're gonna find out everything about Congress real soon. Okay, so I'll explain. First, I want to say about Ted Cruz. I'm really, like, Anna's the salt queen, right? But I've also gotten to a point where I'm tired of covering the liars. So everything Ted Cruz says is a lie, and I don't want to engage with the mainstream media that says, oh no, that's offensive. You have to take his lies and take it at face value and pretend that it has 50% chance of being true and has validity. It doesn't have any validity. And he's a showman and a terrible showman at that. He's such a poor, great actor. Republican voters can see it from a mile away. Trump is a far more sophisticated con man. So as Ted Cruz does these kind of speeches, even the Republicans don't buy it. They know he's a scam artist. So anyways, now on to relevant things. Look, there is one point that the Republicans are a little bit right about. So we do an honest show. So we'll cover no matter what, as it actually is. So they're doing two different infrastructure bills. They were both called infrastructure bills. Now the larger one is being called a budget bill. That's a bit of optics that the Democrats are doing, okay? It's harmless optics, but it is optics. It's not, it was infrastructure, it still is infrastructure, and it has more of the Green New Deal in the larger one that's now being called a budget bill. That part is true, okay? And so why are they doing two different bills if the Democrats can pass the larger one without any Republican votes? So that means instead of doing 1 trillion and 3.5 trillion, they can just combine it if they have enough votes and just pass it as 4.5 trillion. So the 1 trillion, there's two possible explanations and neither one of them is good for the Democrats now. So the Republicans are right that splitting it is weird, right? And some of the ones that are opposed to it go, why the hell are they splitting it? They're gonna trick you guys and they're gonna vote for the $3.5 trillion. Well, they're not tricking you, they're saying they're gonna vote on the $3.5 trillion one. Okay, it's actually a trick in the reverse on Democratic voters, okay? So I'll get to what's most likely, but second most likely is they say, well, it's okay, we help the Republicans with their marketing by doing a bipartisan one. Now it also helps Joe Biden's marketing, that's why he's presumably doing it, because he ran on being bipartisan. But the Republicans will get to say, we did the infrastructure bill. We did infrastructure, okay? Now, the reality is it lets them vote against 75% of the funding for infrastructure, but it still gives Republicans credit for doing infrastructure. So that's a giant marketing help to the Republican Party. That's totally needless if they can pass the larger one with only Democratic votes. That's inarguable. Anyone in the media that tells you that's not inarguable literally can't do math, right? So that's the best case scenario where the Democrats, as usual, help the Republican Party massively for no reason, okay? Now the worst case scenario. No, the most likely thing is the Democrats never meant it. They're just as much corporate stooges, their leadership is, as the Republicans are. So they're gonna actually do Lucy and Charlie Brown and pulling the football. Oh yeah, progressives, come this way, we're gonna vote on $3.5 trillion. Sure, it's gonna happen. Oh golly gee, we couldn't get Manchin or Sinema or any of the other rotating villains to say yes. So we can only do the bipartisan one. So everybody shut up and do unity. And we're all gonna yell at you and say, you're the worst and it's all your fault. If at the very last second, and they'll always leave it to the last second, so it'll seem like an emergency, right? The progressives didn't vote for it, it's their fault. So that is the most common game. And so we're all gonna find out together. We don't know it yet, you're all gonna find it out as we find out. If the Democrats actually pass the $3.5 trillion one from the Senate, and then the House passes it and it becomes law, holy cow, we've actually moved Congress and progressives have made a difference. I would love to give the Democratic Party credit for that. I would love it. It would be literally the first time in my lifetime, in covering politics for 25 years, I have never seen the Democrats mean it. Never, not once, okay? So if they mean it this time, that is a giant victory and you should give credit where credit is due. Now, if it's like every other time and they pull the football and they don't do the $3.5 trillion deal, that is when you will hear mainstream media do marketing for them. Propaganda, pure, worse than anything on Sputnik or anything that you see, like the North Korean television. They will tell you, oh no, we couldn't have done the $3.5 trillion. Everybody always knew it was not gonna be the $3.5 trillion. I can't believe progressives are preventing the $1 billion infrastructure deal. It's all the progressives' fault. They will all say it in unison. And the other good news is I don't care what the mainstream media says anymore. My job is to point out their lies.
So devil's advocate, Democrats now referring to the reconciliation infrastructure bill as the budget bill could be optics on behalf of the Democrats because of course, in order to pass a reconciliation bill, which would only require a simple majority in the Senate, you need to prove that it has an impact on the federal budget, right? So calling it a budget bill helps with that cause. Some red flags though that I wanted to mention is that you already have the Congressional Budget Office studying the impact of the reconciliation version of the infrastructure bill and pushing back a little bit in regard to whether or not it would qualify under the reconciliation process. But I want to be clear about something. The whole thing about reconciliation and the Senate parliamentarian, the Biden administration does not have to listen to the Senate parliamentarian, someone who is unelected, someone who can just easily be fired, and the administration and the Democratic Party can move forward with the reconciliation bill and get it passed with a simple majority. The fact that we're already hearing about like, oh, well, the CBO is looking into this and we don't know if this $3.5 trillion now budget bill is going to qualify for the reconciliation process. We'll see how it plays out. But Nancy Pelosi on multiple occasions has said that she will not bring the bipartisan infrastructure bill for a vote on the House floor until the Senate passes both of the bills, meaning the reconciliation bill and the bipartisan bill. We'll see. We'll see if she's actually gonna follow through on her commitment there. But there's that commitment, and then there's also progressive lawmakers in the House who claim that they'll block the bill. You're right, Cenk, there's gonna be a tremendous amount of pressure on them to not block the bill, to play along and to do whatever the corporate media and corporate donors want them to do. There's gonna be a lot of pressure, but this is the true test to see if they're willing to go through all of the disdain, all of the hatred that they're gonna get in the corporate media to do the right thing, which is to block the bipartisan bill unless it's abundantly clear that they can pass the reconciliation bill.
Okay, guys, everything is online and everything's gonna be decided. So Anna's absolutely right. Calling it the budget bill is a good thing because budgets must pass, right? So that's an indication that they actually want to pass it. Now, in the past, I would have told you there's no chance they're gonna pass that $3.5 trillion bill. If the corporations are not in favor of it, we live under 100% corporate rule. It has no, I would have said 0% chance. Now, I'm not telling you that now, okay? I'm telling you that there is some chance they pass it. Why? One, Bernie is saying 1,000 times over, it's gonna pass, and that this was the fruits of all of his labors and all the compromises. Now, if Bernie gets fooled on that, that is going to be devastating for him, okay? And so on the other hand, if he passes it, guys, people like me who were his critic on $15 minimum wage, etc., we all have to turn around and go, holy cow, he did it. Like I've never seen it in my lifetime where corporate Democrats agree with progressives rather than vice versa. Okay, and what Anna said about Nancy Pelosi is critical. I've never seen Nancy Pelosi draw the line like that and say, I will pass progressive legislation, and if I don't, you should judge me on it. I've never seen it. So we're in unprecedented, uncharted territory. So it does have some chance of passing. But if it doesn't, if it was all a trick all along and the progressives fold and Nina Turner lost, then we're back to a dark place where there's no hope at all. So the progressives cannot fold. If they fold, it would be devastating.
It would be devastating not just for the future of their political careers, which I honestly don't care that much about. It would be devastating literally for the planet. Like the reconciliation version of the infrastructure bill is the one that includes climate action. We need to address climate change. I mean, we need to go even further than what's in the reconciliation bill. But the reconciliation bill is a good start. And if they don't fight for that, I mean, it's just the future is incredibly bleak. By the way, the reconciliation bill, as I said before, includes everything that we actually want. So it's expansion of paid family and medical leave. You've got childcare programs, free community college, an extension of increased Affordable Care Act subsidies, universal pre-K. It's important to address how expensive education is for people. So free community college is a good start, although I would like to see it go further. But all of the human infrastructure stuff is included there. The extension of the child tax credits. We need this. We need to give Americans relief. This is finally a little bit of redistribution of wealth to the bottom instead of a redistribution to the top, as we're likely to get with the bipartisan version of the bill. Look, honestly, if progressives block the bipartisan bill because we're not gonna get the reconciliation bill and we get nothing on infrastructure at all, I would almost prefer that. Because the bipartisan bill is nothing but corporate handouts. There's some positive spending there for infrastructure improvements that we need, but we're privatizing public infrastructure through this. These are all of the physical infrastructure things that corporate America wants because it benefits them and their bottom line. So no, we need the reconciliation version of the bill. That's the bill that has everything that we need, everything that we want. We should be hyper focused on fighting for that.
So last two things on that. One of the reasons why there's also a little bit of hope is because the money is moving. Always follow the money. And so large Democratic donors now are beginning to understand, the planet is burning and we don't have a second planet. And so now this actually endangers me helping the other people. Who cares? But look, I might have billions, but I don't have enough money for this. By the way, bad guys and good guys, right? I know a good guy who's very wealthy and is now literally, he's given up on politics and he's a scientist. He's seen the numbers, there's no question about it. He's now going to go and move and buy tons of real estate as far north as he can and start building bunkers. That's real, okay? And that's a good guy who tried and tried and tried to fix it and thinks, nope, it's broken. We're not gonna be able to fix it in time. You gotta start preparing for a worst case scenario. Now, if enough donors thought that, they might actually be able to push the Democratic Party in the right direction. That's why it's not hopeless. But at the end of the day, what is the most likely outcome? The most likely outcome is the same outcome we've seen for the last 40 years of corporate rule, which is, and this is an important part of this, guys, they're gonna try to run out the clock while pretending there was nothing they could do. So when the $3.5 billion version of it comes up in the Senate, that's when Sinema will object, and then they'll go to the CBO, and then they will take tons and tons of time negotiating back and forth. None of it is meant to actually do negotiations. It's just meant to run out the clock. And then at the end, they'll go, oh my God, we're running out of time. So we got to pass the $1 trillion version, the smaller version, the bipartisan version, and then we'll come back to the other one. We promise, we'll come back to the other one, right? And that's the oldest trick in the book. So what you will see with your own eyes as they start to run out the clock, and that's done on purpose.
We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, lobbyists are big mad at the Biden administration for extending the moratorium on evictions. We'll give you their whiny statements when we return.
back on the social break. Man, Eric Schneider writes in on Super Chat. My father, who's a retired scientist, now thinks climate change isn't real because he now spends all day watching Fox. The propaganda is real. It really is, guys. I've told you before, my dad's got mechanical engineer friends, wonderful human beings. Now they listen to Fox News and they're railing against science. Dude, you're a mechanical engineer. It's amazing how well brainwashing works. It's unbelievable. All right, worst case scenario, Dragon writes in again on the member section. Oh no, he didn't, leave my Star Wars alone. Gregory the Great says, OMFG, the very moment that Cruz said General Akbar, I literally slammed my head on the desk. My God, that guy's a dork. Well, the problem is that he's misusing dorkiness. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, so Cruz is reinventing himself from cuck to cringe. Now I go to Twitch. Robert 1007 writes in, love to tune in every day and get the actual news with context. Thanks you all. Thank you, Robert. You make it possible. Machine Dragon says, take my bozo bucks. Oh, that's a new twist. TYT.com/prime to figure out how to give us money for free if you have Amazon Prime already. Osborne writes in, sweet 16, because of their 16-month anniversary on Twitch being with us. That's wonderful. Lord Wolf says, it's funny how he says that when in reality Ted Cruz would be on the side of the empire. That is enormously true. Irie Man says, hells yeah, 15 months and got my purple dragon tea today, woot. And Irie Man also gifted us up. I'm kind of jealous of that purple dragon, but I have 200 TYT shirts, so I'm afraid of asking for one more from shoptyt.com. And I also have a red and a green Dragon Squad shirt. Anyways, Dave Schmidt gifted 7 subs. Zakharov Low Patev gifted 5 subs. Metal Kitty Mom gave 1,500 bits, and Daisy Dragon gave 500 bits. You guys are amazing. The bits help a lot. Every kind of membership helps a ton. I'm gonna go back to Arthur Ashbrook. Just out of curiosity, they ask on Super Chat, how different do you think things would be right now if Gore would have won in 2000? I'm only 29, but I still look back on that election with disappointment. Well, you and me both, brother. So I think things would have been very different for a lot of things. Certainly, the Iraq war would have never happened. There would be hundreds of thousands of civilians that are still alive today if Al Gore had won. And in fact, of course, he had won, not just the popular vote, but the Electoral College, but the Supreme Court. That actually was a fraud. They actually did steal that election. And we would have taken some action on climate change, but a lot of other things would have remained the same. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. Lots more stories, let's do it.
Well, the real estate industry is very upset with Joe Biden and the Democrats. After shelling out millions of dollars to bribe Washington to end the eviction moratorium, the National Association of Realtors and its allies are furious with the Biden administration for caving to progressive lawmakers, specifically Cori Bush, by extending the eviction moratorium. I love this story. Very rarely do we get to drink the tears of rich men who thought that their legalized bribery would work. And I love celebrating actual progressive action that leads to incredibly important protections for for people in their homes who are facing eviction, but obviously more needs to be done. So thank you, Cori Bush. But let's talk about how these lobbyists are now crying. The industry felt whiplash, said National Association of Home Builders CEO Jerry Howard, whose group includes about 3,000 property managers impacted by the original moratorium. He said this, and this is probably my favorite quote: "It certainly is a slap in the face to the housing industry and to the people that shelter America."
Yeah.
Okay, let's pause for a second. This is a slap in the face to the very people who shelter America. I mean, we want to evict these people during a pandemic, but we shelter America, everybody. We shelter America. We're the good guys. We're the good guys. We shelter America. Let me give you more.
Okay, hold on, I got a comment on
ahead.
that. You're literally trying to unshelter them on this issue. You're trying to evict them and there's a moratorium to stop your evictions. And you have the nerve to put out a statement saying, oh, now they're not gonna let us do evictions when we're the humanitarians that shelter you.
Yeah.
No, the whole point of this is the unsheltering. But they have no shame whatsoever. But this story is amazing, guys, because it tells you exactly how politics actually works.
It is pretty incredible. And it's one of those rare instances where in an outlet or publication like Politico, you get these lobbyists who just say it like it is. Then they're very transparent. Like Cindy Chetty, for instance, she's the senior vice president at the National Multifamily Housing Council, which sounds incredibly lovely, but it's not. She said that the odds were stacked against the industry as outrage over the ban's expiration snowballed. And then she said this: "We did lobby a lot. We did step into gear. I'm not sure there's anything else we could have done. I feel comfortable that we did everything we could." And what did they do exactly? I mean, shelling out literally millions of dollars to lawmakers, to the Biden administration to end the eviction moratorium. The Realtors PAC contributed nearly $2 million to House Democratic candidates in 2020 alone. And that includes $10,000 apiece to Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. And what was also fascinating about this story was how incensed everyone was, including, I don't know, I got the feeling that even the reporters over at Politico were like, what's going on? Because Maxine Waters takes these bribes from the very people that we're talking about here. And she happened to be one of the Democratic lawmakers who was, fighting to extend the moratorium. Now, I want to be clear, Cori Bush was the progressive lawmaker who essentially made the Biden administration bend to her will. And I really respect that and I love that. But Maxine Waters was also speaking out about the need to extend the moratorium, regardless of what she was receiving from these corporate donors. But look, that is an exception to the rule. Every single time we do these types of stories, the money talks because they're legalized bribes. That's all it is. So Cenk, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can't love this story enough. First, the Politico angle is really interesting because what they're doing here is they're reporting on the gamesmanship of politics, which is Politico 101. That's what they do. So they're stating this as a loss for this particular lobbying arm. They're like, it's like almost all the other lobbyists are making fun of the real estate lobbyists. They're like, oh, the drug company lobby got everything they wanted.
Right.
The oil company got everything they wanted. Look at the loser realtor lobby. They couldn't even get what they wanted. And that's what Politico's reporting here. That's why, I mean, these quotes are amazingly honest because they're just reporting on the game. And they're not commenting on the game like, oh, isn't that outrageous that these lobbyists buy our government on a regular basis? And they're outraged the one time that they were foiled. So here, I'm gonna give you a couple of quotes. So that same Cindy Chetty that Anna mentioned, is senior vice president at the National Multifamily Housing Council, said, I'm quoting Politico, said the odds were stacked against the industry as outrage over the ban's expiration snowballed. The outrage is not from American people. The outrage is from the lobbyists. And they genuinely mean it. They don't think it's weird to say, I'm outraged that politicians actually represented the voters for once. Outraged. And Politico's like, oh, that's a good point. This is outrageous. Let's note that the lobbyists are outraged that democracy broke out. Thank you, Cori Bush. All right, now on to Maxine Waters that Anna mentioned. Listen to this telling quote, because here, you could actually take this story and say, look, Maxine Waters took their money, but then voted against them, or was ready to vote against them, and so you can give Maxine Waters credit where credit is due, right? But her quote is telling, so forget Maxine Waters. Listen to what the quote says. She said, now I know that there's a strong lobbying effort, and the realtors have come, and they put a strong letter out last night. And some people are saying, quote, oh my God, I don't want to cross the realtors. Now, that's Maxine Waters talking to fellow Democrats. She is relaying what she finds to be perfectly normal. People in the Democratic caucus saying, oh my God, I don't want to cross the realtors. They don't find that to be a remarkable statement. They find that to be very normal. Oh, I don't want to cross the lobbyists, that might hurt me. I would normally screw over my voters on behalf of lobbyists, and that's why I'm concerned. And Maxine Waters here is kind of doing a good thing, saying, don't be too concerned. Don't worry, we have other lobbyists, okay? But put that aside. Again, I give her credit. Hey, don't be too concerned about the lobbyists, because normally you would be. That's the assumption that every Democrat has. Forget the Republicans. The Republicans have always been against the eviction moratorium, are always on the side of the real estate interest and every other lobbyist group. And notice she also said they put out a strong letter. Now, it almost sounds like Trump, right? They put out a strong letter, okay, it was very strong. Now, why is she saying it that way? Because when the lobbyists put out a letter that's strong, they're saying, you better watch yourself. We're not gonna give you the millions of dollars anymore. That's why Democrats in the caucus are worried. That's why the Democrats actually never voted on it. That's why Cori Bush had to do the protest, because they were never going to vote on it, because the realtors put out a strong letter.
That's right, and I want to give you another figure because it gives you a sense of just how powerful this lobbying group really is, especially compared to one of the most influential lobbying groups, and that's the US Chamber of Commerce. So the National Association of Realtors has some of the deepest pockets in Washington, as Politico reports, shelling out nearly $700 million to influence policy since 1998. The spending puts it behind only the US Chamber of Commerce. So look, when we talk about housing in America, when we talk about how the system seems to be rigged against working Americans and their shelter, this is what is at play behind the scenes. This is the kind of legalized bribery that takes place. This is what shifts policy against working Americans. And so it's an incredibly powerful lobby. And so, I mean, that also speaks to Maxine Waters and how she does deserve credit for being on the right side of this issue, given how powerful this lobbying group is.
Absolutely, and so I'm gonna read you last two quotes here, because this article is amazing, and there's assumptions built into the article is amazing. I'm gonna go back to the first paragraph because it's gonna relate to the Joe Biden quote I'm gonna read you. They said, President Joe Biden's stunning decision to revive the eviction ban in response to intense pressure from progressives has left one of Washington's most influential business coalitions feeling angry and betrayed on the sidelines of power.
Oh, did you spend a lot of your money to bribe the politicians and it didn't work? Are you angry?
This almost reminds me, I'm gonna make a very curious analogy, of Bridgerton, okay?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know we were going there.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because it feels like one of those things that the high society writes. Like, oh, gossip in high society. Ooh, the real estate lobby has lost influence. Ooh, they are not going to get a good suitor this year. Everybody in the lobbies, real estate lobby is going to be punished. They feel betrayed by Biden. They thought he was going to do everything that they want. They assumed, like every other lobbyist, that Biden would do everything that they wanted. That's why they're feeling angry and betrayed, and it's left one of the most influential business coalitions in a tiffy, okay? And again, that's just reporting Politico. Winners and losers, ha, you lobbyists weren't corrupt enough, or your corruption didn't work well enough. Now, we get to a killer quote inside the article. They say, in the case of evictions, lobbyists even had Biden's word that the ban was done, only to have the president abruptly backtrack. Now, wait a minute. That's the lead, you buried the lead. So this whole time, the Biden administration has been pretending, oh no, we were in favor of the eviction moratorium, but golly gee, there was nothing we could do. Kavanaugh whispered something in a case, and so we didn't have any choice, but Biden didn't want to do it, right? But wait a minute, we just found out in Politico, as an aside, he had promised the real estate lobbyists that he would end the moratorium because of the money that they gave the Democratic Party. Now, did Politico make note of that and go, oh my God, Biden has been lying the whole time? No, they just assumed that's normal. Of course the president was lying.
It's normie behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
And is Jen Psaki being asked about it, hounded in the White House press? No, she got one question about it last week and then she's done with it. And she said, oh, I give Pelosi and ourselves credit, not Cori Bush, because we were always gonna do it. No, you weren't. Now it's proven to be a lie. Is there gonna be any accountability? No, the press will keep on pretending that Joe Biden has the positions that he claims to have, but never actually does have, because secretly he's been promising the lobbyists Don't worry, I'm gonna deliver for you guys. And why did any of these plans get foiled in the first place? Because Justice Democrats stood up and said, no, we say no. And so Cori Bush, and you guys go back and watch the video I did the night Cori Bush got elected. I said, this is a real person and she's gonna make real change because she's not one of them, she's one of us. And she did. And what did I tell you about AOC sit-in? I said it was the best thing she's ever done because that's how you actually get power, by getting the media attention, influence, etc. And they've got to do it and create that kind of good trouble over and over again because it actually works. They tell you not to do it in mainstream media and in Democratic leadership, not because they're worried it isn't going to work, but because they're worried that it is going to work. And it did work in this case to have real progressives fight and win. And by the way, as I've told you for 20 straight years now, the only way to win is to fight. Power never concedes without a demand. If Cori Bush had not demanded it, these lobbyists would have been high-fiving, drinking champagne, and Politico would have written an article about how great the real estate lobbyists are in killing American dreams.
All right, we got to go to break, but that does it for our first hour. When we come back for hour two, we'll talk about what the latest updates are on the possibility of Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, getting impeached. And also, one of his accusers has now spoken out publicly about what she dealt with when she was working as one of his aides. Come back, we've got that story and more for you.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive, and you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before. Back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. We promised amazing stories. I think we're delivering. I think some of those stories were genuinely amazing, and we've got more where that came from. So, Casper.
I knew you would love that story we just did in the first hour of the show. I pitched it, not a big deal.
Not a big deal. No, I had not seen it. She produces the show, and you're right. I loved it. It was one of the most telling stories about American politics. Yeah. And we were talking during the break. It's damning of the mainstream media that they never explained it to you. Damning. They couldn't figure that out. It's right there, right? All right.
Speaking of damning, let's move on to Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, has resigned as he faces the possibility of impeachment. At the same time, one of his accusers has come forward to speak out publicly about what she experienced while working for him as an aide. Now, this follows the state attorney general report that found that Cuomo had sexually harassed 11 women, and he could be facing criminal charges as a result. Now, Melissa DeRosa, that's the top aide for Cuomo, announced in a statement that she's stepping down, and she said, personally, the last 2 years have been emotionally and mentally trying. I am forever grateful for the opportunity to have worked with such talented and committed colleagues on behalf of our state. Now, she has been embroiled in this controversy herself because she has been accused of helping to foster the type of environment that allowed for Cuomo to sexually harass his aides. The 38-year-old who held the highest ranking appointed position in the state appeared throughout the New York State Attorney General Letitia James' August 3rd report. The report detailed DeRosa's role in seeking to discredit one of Cuomo's accusers, Lindsey Boylan, by leaking personal records and taking part in an effort to write and release a letter questioning her character. The document was never made public. And of course, this is not the first time that both Cuomo and his top aide DeRosa have been embroiled in controversy. In February, DeRosa came under scrutiny for her role in the administration's underreporting of COVID-19 deaths in nursing homes last year. A different report from James's office released in January found that New York had actually underreported COVID-19 deaths among residents of nursing homes by approximately 50%. And remember, Cuomo was the one who forced nursing homes to take in elderly patients who had tested positive for COVID and hadn't fully recovered yet. And that's how COVID spread in nursing homes in the state of New York. Now, before we go to some video featuring one of Cuomo's aides who has accused him of sexual assault and harassment, Cenk, I wanted to get your thoughts on DeRosa's decision to step down.
Yeah, she's trying to avoid accountability and she's running for the hills. Super obvious. And hey, don't aid and abet bad guys at work because you think it'll help your interests. So, the only details we know are the ones that are public. The ones that are public don't look good. It looked like she was helping to, try to question the credibility of people who had been sexually harassed. That is not a very good thing to do, although some of the alt left probably are applauding her now.
I mean, they engage in it. That's certainly true,
Yeah.
right? Go after someone who accuses sexual harassment, go after them by trying to question their credibility.
And smear them, yeah. So, maybe they're celebrating Cuomo in those circles, but of course those are not real progressives. So, now back to this. I think the details of the assistant are beyond damning. It's her testimony alone, let alone the fact that it's backed up by 10 other women who have similar allegations and all corroborated at the time by other folks. It's over, man. It's way beyond over. Listen to what she has to say, and then we're done with this.
Yeah, so this is Brittany Camiso. She spoke to CBS this morning about what she experienced when she was working as one of the aides for Cuomo. Let's watch.
While I was upstairs in the office, the governor said, "Why don't we take a selfie?"
So his suggestion, you said? With your phone?
With my phone. I then felt, while taking the selfie, his hand go down my back onto my butt, and he started rubbing it. Not sliding it, not, quickly brushing over it, rubbing my butt.
And did you ask him, what are you doing?
Well, this was while I was taking the selfie. I became so nervous that my hands were clearly shaking, and a lot of the photos that I was snapping were completely blurry. I showed him them, and he said, "Oh, those aren't good." And he said, "Why don't we go sit on the couch, and we can take a better one."
So you sat on the couch?
I sat on the couch because I thought to myself, okay, I don't think on the couch that he would have a way to just do what he just did. So I felt safer actually on the couch. And in the photo, I have my arm wrapped around his shoulder, almost as if, we were taking a picture with a buddy.
So she also talks about, him, she's clearly stating that he had groped her on multiple occasions, by the way. We have more video to get to in just a second, but that's pretty damning. And also, I just want to point out that as this is happening, they take the selfie because he insists on taking the selfie. And you look at that image and it seems like everything is totally fine. It seems like everything is great, as if she wasn't being literally assaulted as that photo was being taken, right? So I point that out because not all is what it seems, right? Like sometimes the optics of something lead you in the wrong direction in terms of like knowing what's really going on. But when you're talking about an imbalance of power, when you're talking about literally the governor of New York, a woman like Camiso finds herself in a situation where she's got to play along to get along, right? Because there's a lot at stake if you speak out. There's a lot at stake if you slap Cuomo's hand away as he's groping you like that.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the right way of phrasing it. She's not going along to get along. She's nervous. She's scared.
Right, of course.
And
that's
so
what I meant.
Yeah, and so guys, it's not just about getting fired. There's gaslighting. Like, oh, this is normal. What are you complaining about? This is like, you're being weird. Like, oh my God, because it's hard to understand, but it comes across when you read the report. That everybody in the office has such reverence for Cuomo, and in America, and this is probably true in a lot of countries, there's such reverence overall for politicians that they're put on a pedestal, usually by the media, right? They're these all-powerful entities, especially Cuomo in New York. Oh my God, nobody could question Cuomo.
I mean, people were calling Cuomo supporters, or people were like loving on Cuomo so hard during the beginning of the pandemic because the juxtaposition of Cuomo to Trump was so severe, right? And so people were like referring to themselves as Cuomo-sexuals. So imagine being a woman who works for him, who's being sexually assaulted by him, feeling like you can't speak out, because if you do, I mean, the entire country's like in the middle of a love affair with Cuomo, right?
Well, at least the mainstream media was, right? And yes, the juxtaposition was real. Cuomo would sound rational and Trump would sound unhinged. And when you watch them back to back, you're like, Jesus. And I get it, it was a super low bar. You just had to sound a little bit more rational than a person who should literally be locked up in an insane asylum, right? Oh, why don't we inject bleach and find out what happens? Cuomo would come out and go, oh, maybe we should listen to scientists. Everyone's like, yes, right? And so now, having said that, but the love affair that mainstream media had with Cuomo was decades. It started way before COVID. Cuomo could do no wrong. Cynthia Nixon challenges him. Any other progressive challenges him. As Zephyr Teachout does. They're like, how dare they? These challengers have no credibility. I don't know why they're bothering to do a primary of a good Democrat like Andrew Cuomo. That was the press. It wasn't other Democrats. The press is the worst. They aided and abetted Cuomo his entire career. He would have never had the kind of power that he had if it wasn't for the press constantly kissing his ass. Okay, now fast forward to that moment in the office, and the press gaslit you, everybody in that office gaslit you, and you thinking, well, this guy's untouchable, and they say he's like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now I'm gonna go and tell everybody that they're all wrong and I'm right, that it's not right for him to do that to me? The pressure is unbelievable. That's why you don't just immediately, some people don't immediately report it. And that's not because, oh, they had a secret, sinister plan to blackmail him later, because you know how women are, right? No, it's because they were nervous. They were nervous because of the situation and the culture at hand. Now, it got worse with her. We gotta go to the other clips so you understand what kind of a monster Cuomo is.
All right, let's watch.
He gets up and he goes to give me a hug. And I could tell immediately when he hugged me, it was in probably the most sexually aggressive manner than any of the other hugs that he had given me. It was then that I said, Governor, my words were, you're going to get us in trouble. And I thought to myself, that probably wasn't the best thing to say, but at that time I was so afraid that one of the mansion staff, that they were going to come up and see this and think, oh, is that what she comes here for? And that's not what I came there for, and that's not who I am. And I was terrified of that. And when I said that, he walked over, shut the door so hard to the point where I thought, for sure, someone downstairs must think if they heard that, what is going on? Came back to me, and that's when he put his hand up my blouse and cupped my breast over my bra. I exactly remember looking down, seeing his hand, which is a large hand, thinking to myself, oh my God, this is happening. It happened so quick. He didn't say anything. When I stopped it, he just pulled away and walked away.
What's so sick about all of this, and I see it over and over again in any story involving sexual misconduct in a workplace. The victim, in this case, who we're hearing from right now, Brittany Camiso, even now in retelling the story, she's second guessing her own behavior as like we live in a culture that assigns blame to the woman who's being preyed upon. And you see it over and over again. Like, maybe that wasn't the right thing to say. Maybe I should have done this. I don't want anyone to think this or that about me. No, she's not the bad guy. But as most women in similar situations find, society treats them like they did something to deserve it.
Yeah, and the reason she's stating all of it that way is because she's not wrong that some percentage of the country will look at that and go,
a huge percentage, percentage.
We'll look at that and say she wanted it. It was her fault. She led him on. Guaranteed. A significant percentage. So she then has that cloud hanging over her for the rest of her life. And by the way, we're reliving her harassment over and over again, millions of times. And that's what people are gonna remember about her. And that sucks. So meanwhile, the New York State Assembly has started impeachment proceedings. Andrew Cuomo's arrogance knows no bounds. This is not a lone story. There's no he said, she said, there's he said, and they all said, right? This is not remotely close. Your own, by the way, these Democrats in New York were so subservient to Andrew Cuomo. Now they're all walking around like they're tough guys. Almost all of them would do anything that he ordered them to do. And even when they have turned on you because your actions are so monstrous and unacceptable, when are you gonna get the clue that maybe you should step aside? And by the way, Don Lemon on CNN is saying he should step aside because he's ruining the Cuomo name. Oh, I didn't know it was that important.
It's amazing. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Rand Paul has some thoughts on mask mandates and vaccinations, but he's getting some pushback from the teachers union and more. And later in the show, Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to teach us about corporate communism. What is that? Well, she'll explain. Come right back.
So back here during the social break, first American heroes Anna Allen and Greg Herbster just joined by hitting the join below button below. I'm gonna get it out eventually on YouTube. That join button is right underneath the videos on YouTube, and that's how you become a member. Help spread the truth and bring change. Again, you saw the Politico story that we did. Which other news outlet is telling you the reality about how lobbyists run Washington and how shocking it is when Democrats actually don't listen to what lobbyists say, and how Biden was lying and we proved it to you guys? No other mainstream media outlet says that because they work for corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. Anyway, so when you guys become members, that's how you change media and change reality. Also though, of course, through activism. So that leads me to some questions from our member section. Little Mac McGee asks, Cenk, is there any chance of the Squad and or TYT leading a similar Capitol Hill protest, insist on getting rid of legalized bribes working? Let's assume we can get a massive amount of people willing to stay indefinitely for now. Well, that answer is very split. Is there a chance that TYT would lead such a charge? We already did. So we did Democracy Spring a couple of years back, and it was the largest civil protest in American history at the Capitol. Over 1,000 people were arrested protesting money in politics. Now you remember when CNN and everybody else was talking about that in the New York Times? Oh right, you don't remember that because they didn't talk about it ever. It was amazing. It was one of the biggest acts of civil disobedience, like I said, the Capitol has ever seen. And they were like, well, whatever, I don't care. Money in politics is awesome, and you guys are progressives with no power, so I'm never ever gonna cover you. And look guys, that's partly why I started Just Democrats, because you can't get the spotlight if you don't have power. The press loves the powerful, hates the powerless, right? So when we brought thousands of people and about 1,200 of us got arrested, the press didn't cover it at all with one exception, which I'll tell you in a second. When Cori Bush did it on her own, and by the way, with a lot less people, more people should have shown up and helped her, right? With a tiny amount of people, she changed everything because she's a powerful congressperson now. So when I asked you to help progressives get into Congress, that's among the reasons why, because they make a big, big difference. Now, the one exception was at the very end, the last day of the, because it lasted all week, the last day of the Democracy Spring, Rosario Dawson showed up, and we love her for it. She's in a TYT shirt and everything, and that's when it got press coverage because a celebrity showed up. This press in this country suck. Last part of the answer is, will they, those Just Democrats do it on behalf of corruption to protest it? I'm being honest with you, no, they will not do that. It offends their colleagues too much. All right, back on TYT. So after the 2-hour show, we have a bonus episode for members. And so today we got a hilarious story in the bonus episode. We try to make it more fun, but I'm gonna add one more thing here. It's a personal story. I was just saying during the social break to members that I got arrested on the Capitol steps, the same place that Cori Bush was having the protest for civil disobedience. And I'm gonna tell you a story I probably shouldn't because it was one of the best moments of my life, but it's a little embarrassing telling it. But when we have more time, that's the whole point of the bonus episode. So hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. And for the members, we'll talk about that and have a good time. All right, Anna.
Republican Senator Rand Paul went on an anti-mask mandate and anti-vaccine mandate rant. Now, there are 100 senators in the US Senate, as we know. 98 of them have been vaccinated. The other 2 includes Rand Paul, who has already gotten COVID and thinks that he doesn't need to get vaccinated. So he's spreading disinformation to the rest of the public. Let's hear what he has to say.
It's time for us to resist. They can't arrest all of us. They can't keep all of your kids home from school. They can't keep every government building closed. Although I've got a long list of ones they might keep closed or might ought to keep closed. We don't have to accept the mandates, lockdowns, and harmful policies of the petty tyrants and bureaucrats. We can simply say no, not again. Nancy Pelosi, you will not arrest or stop me or anyone on my staff from doing our jobs. We have either had COVID, had the vaccine, or been offered the vaccine. We will make our own health choices. We will not show you a passport. We will not wear a mask. We will not be forced into random screenings and testings so you can continue your drunk with power reign over the Capitol. President Biden, we will not accept your agency's mandates or your reported moves towards a lockdown. No one should follow the CDC's anti-science mask mandates.
All right, well, no one has suggested that people get arrested if they don't get vaccinated. That was just completely made up. Mentioning Nancy Pelosi, who's just the House Speaker and doesn't have the power to unilaterally call for the arrest of people who refuse to get vaccinated. Like, just complete made up paranoia. I mean, Rand Paul knows that this is all made up, but he's playing into the paranoia of his supporters who think that somehow, magically, without us ever hearing it, Democrats are planning on arresting people who refuse to get vaccinated. Okay.
Yeah. Look, Anna, I've gotten to the place that you were at a while ago. I'm tired of the demagogues and covering them. And so, all right, but we have to tell you, of course, Rand Paul's a liar. It's the most obvious thing in the world. We have to tell you other obvious things like all the doctors aren't lying in unison at once. Because the Republicans really believe that. And by the way, they're getting it from they're getting their so-called news from different sources. So when I said online, look, 99% of the doctors are not likely to be lying. No, there's not a poll behind it. It's colloquially, saying almost every doctor says it. I'm sure you could find the alien DNA doctor, etc. So I'm not saying 100%. And by the way, now there are Republican doctors and they're beginning to like we talked about earlier in the show, there's retired scientists. One of our members wrote it. My dad's a retired scientist, but since he started watching Fox News, he doesn't believe in science anymore. So yeah, there'll be some percentage. It probably isn't 99%, but overwhelming majority of doctors say that yes, please take the vaccine; it'll save your life. And Republicans say don't listen to doctors. Okay, but then you should listen to a politician like Rand Paul instead. So on average now, over 500 people a day are dying in America. We're back to really bad numbers, okay? And that's with over 71% of the country already got at least one dose of the vaccine. So it's just the 29% that are dying like nuts. They're driving up the numbers so high on just the unvaccinated. Almost everyone who died yesterday, of the 500, it was more than 500, they were all unvaccinated. They made one choice and it cost them their life. And that choice was listening to someone like Rand Paul, who thinks I'm gonna help my political career a little bit because I've sensed that the right wing has, lost its mind over this. I'm gonna help them lose their mind. And maybe I could run for president as the most rabid right winger who said the craziest things, right? So in order to help Rand Paul's career, you might literally lose your life over it. So this month in August, at least 15,000 people will die because they chose not to get vaccinated.
And look, Rand Paul, he got sick with COVID. He knows what COVID is like. Now, it appears that he was mostly asymptomatic, but if he weren't asymptomatic and he needed medical attention, he would get the best of the best. He'd get the best medical attention. The people who unfortunately listen to his nonsense, which is all about his own personal political career and all of that, they're not gonna get the best of the best. They're not gonna have access to the best healthcare. Many of the people who end up getting sick with COVID aren't gonna have access to healthcare, period. And so I share that because, look, we live in a country that celebrates individualism, and look, doesn't matter who dies, doesn't matter if your lies lead to all sorts of pain and suffering among others. Look out for yourself. It's all about your own personal career, your own personal profit. Doesn't matter. That's just the culture we live in, and that's what's so frustrating, that we have elected lawmakers, okay, elected representatives who are intentionally lying to the American people for their own political careers. It's not to look out for the best interests of the constituents who voted them into office in the first place. We keep seeing that over and over again. Now, we're luckily starting to see a different tune from two different individuals or groups that I wanted to call attention to right now. And the first is the teachers union. Because initially it appeared that the teachers union was pushing back against vaccine mandates for public school teachers, but now we're hearing from the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Her name is Randi Weingarten, and it appears that they have now changed their tone on this. Let's hear what she has to say.
Vaccines are the single most important way of dealing with COVID. We've always dealt with, or since 1850, we've dealt with vaccines in schools. It's not a new thing to have immunizations in schools. And I think that on a personal matter, as a matter of personal conscience, I think that we need to be working with our employers, not opposing them, on vaccine mandates. And so, and all their vaccine policies. And so I said last week that I wanted to bring my leadership together, and we are this week, to, revisit and to reconsider our policy that we passed in October about voluntary, that the best way to do this was to do it volitionally. Now, let me just say, my members have stepped up. 90% of the teacher members have actually gotten the vaccine. But I do think that the circumstances have changed and that vaccination is a community responsibility.
So that's positive news, and she's right about that. And remember, we're still not in a situation where children are getting vaccinated. So if you have unvaccinated children, unvaccinated teachers, all doing in-person learning, that of course increases the risk. And even Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas, the governor of Arkansas, has changed his tone in regard to mandates, and that really surprised me. Now he's talking specifically about masks and how he has some regrets when it comes to his own leadership. Cenk, let's just watch this video real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts.
In schools, those under 12 can't get vaccinated. You signed a bill that was against mask mandates. You changed your position. Why?
Well, facts change, and leaders have to adjust to the new facts that you have and the reality of what you have to deal with. Whenever I signed that law, our cases were low. We were hoping that the whole thing was gone in terms of the virus, but it roared back with the Delta variant. And whenever we're pushing the vaccines out, but those under 12 cannot get vaccinated in the schools. And so I realized that we needed to have more options for our local school districts to protect those children. And so I asked the legislature to redo the law that prohibited those requirements or those options for the school districts to protect the children.
I'm glad that he's had a change of heart. And I should note that the Delta variant has hospitalized some children who have gotten infected with it. Yeah, so there's a huge risk there.
Yeah, again, always the children do get affected less, but from time to time they do get hospitalized, and some adolescents have died. Okay, now, so I'm gonna break it down one by one real quick. First of all, super goofy stuff. I can't stop thinking of the Loki variant every time I hear Delta variant. Okay, I'm moving on. Asa Hutchinson, when he came out and said, "Oh, I'm reversing what I said about the mandates," as a Republican governor, I thought, "Oh, that's interesting news. Asa Hutchinson's retiring." You can't run for office again in the Republican Party if you say things that are sane. And he's trying to protect the citizens of his state because, and by the way, who are predominantly Republican. So almost everyone who's dying now is unvaccinated, and most of the unvaccinated are Republicans, especially in Arkansas. So he's losing his own constituents. But if you do think that something that's rational, you will be punished in a Republican primary. So I thought he must have thought to himself, I guess I'm done in politics, but I can't let these people die. Which, by the way, you should give him a lot of credit for. He should have never passed the law in the first place. You should give him discredit. He's a very standard corporate politician, etc. But hey, that's a moment of bravery there as he heads off into the sunset. Because no way Republican primary voters vote for a rational person. Impossible. Okay, it certainly hasn't happened in the last 5 years. Let's put it that way. Okay, now back to the unions. So remember, union members are also real people, and hence some of them are progressive, some of them are moderate, some of them are conservative. So 11% of the teachers haven't gotten vaccinated and don't want to get vaccinated. Why? They probably won't listen to watch Fox News. I'm being serious. Or maybe they're from Kentucky and they listen to their Senator Rand Paul telling them that COVID's awesome and you shouldn't worry about masks or vaccines. It's no big deal. And by the way, Rand Paul's such a thing. He gets a mild version of it, which happens, by the way. There's plenty of cases with mild versions, and then there's plenty of cases, including 620,000 Americans who are dead with very bad cases of COVID. But Rand Paul thinks, I got a mild case, so what do I care? I assume that everybody will go through the same thing I did. Well, then why are all the hundreds of thousands of people dead in America? 4 million dead all across the world. I don't know, it's not me, I don't care, I'm a conservative.
You're giving him too much credit. He doesn't care how other people are affected by it.
Yeah, and he knows he's lying, so it doesn't really matter. Because Rand Paul is not a total idiot. That's why it's super obvious that he knows he's lying.
Exactly.
And then by the way, for unions, in 2016, only 51% of unions households voted for Hillary Clinton. The others voted for Trump. Because again, they're normal people. There's conservatives, there's Democrats, and the union bosses, to be fair to them, have to be accountable to their actual members. And if their members want something, you got to keep that in mind. But all of that to say, I give great credit to the teachers union here for doing the right thing and taking a principled stand, even though some of their members don't agree with it, okay? Now, one more thing. I mentioned the story about how I said the great majority of doctors obviously think you should take the vaccine, and you're literally endangering your life if you're not. And most of the right wingers that responded said, "Oh no, that's totally wrong." At least half the doctors say don't take the vaccine. Now that's not remotely true, but remember, they're not getting the same news that we're getting. They're getting videos from Rand Paul, they're watching Fox News and Newsmax and reading Breitbart or some crap on Facebook that popped up as a meme.
Joe Rogan.
So, or listening to Joe Rogan in this case, and then they genuinely believe, well, doctors don't know, it's 50-50. Everybody's guessing. So I'm gonna be safe because they've been told the safe position is to not get vaccinated. Everyone who's dying is unvaccinated, almost everyone. But your call, brothers and sisters. We're trying to help you, but if you want to listen to a lying politician instead, have at it, Hoss.
I mean, there are people who are now lying about their fully vaccinated status in order to get a third booster shot. Like people are doing that. There's a trend of that. So it's just amazing because on one hand you have people who do take it seriously and they're like, I'm not even waiting. I'm not waiting for another variant. I'm gonna get a third booster shot. I'm gonna lie about it to get a third one. And then on the other hand, you have that, far smaller portion of the country that just at this point still refuses to get vaccinated, even given the massive risks associated with it. Anyway, we got to take our final break of the show, so let's do that. And when we come back, Marjorie Taylor Greene will teach us about what she refers to as corporate communism.
back during the social break. All right, some programming notes. Got old school tonight. Me and Mark Thompson, we're gonna have a great time. So free and available to everyone right here at 10 o'clock Eastern. And the second episode is just for the members, but the first episode is 45 minutes. Check it out, see if you like it. And Big Rick Energy is up after our bonus episode here, and that's at 8:30 Eastern. So bonus episodes next, then Big Rick Energy on Twitch, so twitch.tv/TYT. Then old school everywhere we broadcast after that, okay? And then now, New American Heroes, Nessa Nguyen, Kirk Arnold, and Amina Mama. You guys are all wonderful for joining. They hit the join button below on YouTube. One of my best friends in high school, last name Nguyen, which actually, of course, is not uncommon in Vietnam. And I want to tell you guys one more time, Too Strong Coffee extended the Christmas sale in August. One more day. Yes, this mug is super fun. It says Santa is progressive and Jesus is too. You see it in the back, okay? And you control your conservative family members by getting it, or you could just get it and enjoy it. But also the reason I'm telling you is because there's big Christmas discounts as well. So go to twostrongcoffee.com/TYT, and remember some of the proceeds go to great progressive organizations. All right, now I'm going to Twitch. Wizard 1952 said, "Yay, 8 months of bozo bucks." Now that's a thing. That's the second time today. Surfer Girl Gritty said, "We're gonna have a baby TYT because she's been with us for 9 months." A little awkward, but I hear you. Thank you. Kamunui writes in, "Take the rich Baldy's money, 6 months." I think we're getting a little carried away with making fun of Jeff Bezos as you're redirecting his money towards us. Okay, but if you want to know how, if you already have Amazon Prime, it is free for you and it does get us Bezos's money. So tyt.com/prime to find out how to do that in about 30 seconds. Drink That OJ writes in, "Half a year with TYT on Twitch. Thanks so much to you all for helping me to stay sane in these crazy, crazy times." I'm gonna say one quick thing about that. Guys, my hope is endless. I've got a new plan after Nina lost, and it's a great plan, and we're gonna do that one. And if that one fails, by the way, we're gonna do the one after that, and the one after that. Because as Ice Cube said, our aggression is depressing. It don't give a mother effer time to learn his lesson.
All right, Ari Melber.
What?
I said, all right, Ari Melber.
Is that he?
Yeah,
quotes?
he raps like in a show regularly.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna be relentless, and we are gonna win. Goku Just Saying writes in, "Did I sub for 8 months straight to see progressives push the needle on lobbyist corruption? I guess." You do indeed, and I love it. Franklin Sharp Slicer with another poem. "Not enough firefighters, not enough nurses. What could make things any worse? Sure, Ada Gates mix it with a bit of margarine table is green, and we have worst mix we've ever seen. Go Salt and Jank." Well, that's the next story we're gonna do, Franklin, and as always, we appreciate your poetry. Love you, we'll be back. On TYT, Cenk and Anna with you. Casper.
Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene was on Matt Gaetz's new podcast, because of course he's got a podcast called Firebrand, to talk about everything from vaccine passports to January 6th. Now, the topic of big tech and big pharma came up, and Greene decided to elaborate on her theory of corporate communism. What is that? Well, let's hear.
Think about this though. All throughout history, every time we've seen a country follow into Marxism, and as that changes, this is what happens, and it's happening right now in America. The small businesses get crushed, and it's the big corporations that get rewarded by the government, and they meld together.
Totally.
And we have seen that big tech has already done it. We're seeing it with big pharma. We're seeing it with, contractors, people that win big government contracts. These large corporations
The
are
military-industrial complex.
Military-industrial complex is a major issue. So I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism. Corporate communism destroys small businesses in America. And I have a very good example from my district. They destroy the small businesses and the corporations gain all the control and they can't be defeated. And they do the bidding of the government like they're doing. Biden's saying, the government's not going to mandate vaccines. But the big corporations are doing it. Corporate communism. They're putting the policy in place through their businesses on their employees and on their customers, like we've seen with the airlines.
All right, so corporations are allegedly doing the bidding of the government. You mean the government officials who take massive bribes from corporations so they're deregulated? So that antitrust regulations aren't implemented or applied or enforced? So what she's saying about massive conglomerates or these massive corporations eating up smaller companies to create these monopolies, that's true.
Yes.
So she seems, she's not all lost, right? She seems to recognize a real problem. It's just that her solutions to that problem and her, I guess, what she thinks has led to this problem isn't right at all. She thinks that the government is pushing for monopolies when in reality the government is bribed to avoid preventing the monopolies from happening in the first place, and they're bribed by the very corporations that she's complaining about. And by the way, she should know it. She takes their bribes. She knows it.
Yeah. So I love this clip. I can't wait to break it down. It's got a big upside in there, by the way. And of course it has a big downside. So I've kind of made an internal pledge to myself, which I talked about in the beginning of the show, where I'm gonna try not to call Republicans names. We did a poll on it. It was about anti-vaxxers, but we've done one on Republicans before too, tyt.com/polls. We did it on last Friday's show, and I went and voted no for the first time. No, let's not call them names, okay? By the way, I lost 80 to 20. 80%, 82% of you said, yeah, call them names. But man, are they testing me here. Corporate communism? Come on, guys. I mean,
Her eyes lit up when she said it. She's like, I got one for you.
Okay.
Corporate communism. I talk about corporate communism because I don't know what communism is. It just sounds scary. And then I say Marxism too. Ooh, Marxism. I don't know what Marxism is, but it sounds scary. Come on.
Okay, guys.
I just can't. I mean.
Okay, so for folks who don't know, communism is when there is no private property, and hence by definition, there would be no private corporations. There would be no corporations at all.
Corporate communism.
Okay, now capitalism is where you have private property and you have private interest. By the way, in capitalism, you also have the government run some things like the military, the police, and healthcare in most developed countries, or at least healthcare insurance. But those are mixed economies. But capitalism is private industry, i.e. corporations. Communism is no private industry, no corporations allowed. I have to clarify this because a lot of right wingers don't know it. They literally don't know it. They listen to dumbass podcasts. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to do it. Not overly intelligent podcasts like Matt Gaetz, and they have not overly intelligent representatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Can I call her Marjorie? Is that good enough? Anyway.
Monopolies are a product of capitalism. Okay,
well,
it is a product of capitalism. Maximizing profits, that is the point of capitalism. In fact, if she read anything from Marx, she would understand that these monopolies that she's complaining about, that is part and parcel. That is a result of capitalism,
okay.
Right? So anyway.
I'm gonna get to the good news because it's really interesting and really important, believe it or not, in this crazy story. I mean, not overly rational story. But the one thing that Karl Marx and Adam Smith agreed on, Adam Smith, of course, a great writer about capitalism, is that Adam Smith also said, well, monopolies would naturally rise out of capitalism and you have to regulate them. Otherwise, he didn't frame it in this word, but I love this word. Otherwise, you're gonna get corporatism, where the corporations kill off the free market for their own benefit. Okay, so both Marx and Adam Smith warned you about monopolies. Meanwhile, she takes it and goes, oh, they both were in favor. No, I don't know what she's thinking. It's like, I'm done with her. All right.
This is scary.
Okay, but guys, one more thing. She has, and this is super important, and not just Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gaetz. Most Republicans believe this. They have it completely backwards. They think the government is making the corporations give them money to help corporations. But why would it be the government that's driving it? The corporations which one's more logical? Corporations are giving millions of dollars to the government so the government can pass rules that give them an unfair advantage so the corporations make more money. Isn't that more logical? Because that is what happens. And that's exactly why they're doing it. And like here, I'll give you one quick example. In New Jersey, Tesla was banned from having dealerships. Why? Because the other car dealerships gave money to the politicians and said, just ban them. We don't care why, just ban them, right? That is those corporate interests telling the government, you must do this and I'm gonna bribe you. It's called the campaign contribution. I'm gonna bribe you so that I make more money. It's not that the government controls the corporations. It's the corporations control the government through the bribes. Now, if you were conservative, you would know that. The old days, conservatives did know that. They don't know it anymore because they got tricked by these demagogues, right? Understand, bribery sucks, corruption sucks, the swamp sucks, which leads finally to the good news. The reason Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz are talking about how evil corporations are is because they realize, our own voters hate corporate rule. And we now have to misdirect them. We have to say, okay, you hate corporate rule, I get you. I can't win if I tell you corporations are great, which is what the Republican Party did for almost their entire existence. So now I'm gonna do one last trick. I'm gonna say you're right about how much corporations suck, but that's because of the government regulations. Make sure you strip away the government regulations so that corporations have more power. What? You would only believe that if you're doing propaganda on behalf of those corporations.
Yeah, see, I call it corporate communism. Now, Matt Gaetz also weighed in on that, so let's hear what he has to say.
I'm not against America having successful businesses.
No.
We want that to happen all over our country. But I also remember a time when the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, they weren't just industry tycoons. They were also statesmen. It was always about our country. And I really fear that with some of these globalist entities, America is less important to them than the next round of stock dividends. And that's not America first. And the neo-libertarians might be a little sensitized to that commentary, but it's just true. And I think we're at a different point in our country where enough is enough with just shouldering or shoveling the responsibilities and proclivities of government onto business, and then having business go execute it on behalf of government, but with that melded corporate communism. Number one threat to our liberty really is big government, but the number two threat is probably big business.
Yeah, Cenk, remember all those robber barons of yesteryear? They were statesmen. Those robber barons were robbing you because they love you.
They were called robber barons.
It's amazing.
And so they were vicious. These guys, they rewrite history. Guys, look, just please, you don't have to trust us. And whatever you do not trust the right-wing media. Go do research on your own. There's tons and tons of books. You remember the thing called books? You could read them, they had real information in them.
You should read Marx.
And
seriously, though.
I mean, by God, if you're a right winger, forget Marx, just read anything, read Adam Smith, read anything that has history and reality in it. The robber barons were not pro-America. They stripped this country bare for their own profit and crushed average Americans on the way. That's why they were called robber barons. This idea that, oh my God, if you just let big companies and the really, really wealthy do whatever they want, we could get rid of corporate communism.
The Rockefellers did the right thing, Cenk. They were statesmen.
And the only question I have, and this is a legitimate question, is, are these two knuckleheads really that unintelligent? Or do they know and they think, this is perfect. All my voters are pissed against corporate rule, but my donors are corporations, so I'm gonna trick them into helping my donors. What a bunch of rubes. I don't know the answer to that. But either way, it is damning. All right, members, we got a great bonus episode for you guys. A hilarious story of another right-winger gone nuts. And my favorite story that happened to me, but it's kind of embarrassing. We'll see you there. Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories. Gee, I wonder why we didn't get $15 minimum wage. Because they're all raising money from the guys who don't want to increase the minimum wage.
And we play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The Republicans say we will serve our corporate masters at all costs, including killing democracy, yet here we are. Where else do you hear that? You hear that on NBC, on ABC, on CBS? You hear it nowhere.
They don't want to talk about money in politics because it's really hard to pass judgment when your media organization is funded by fossil fuel companies.
The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. And we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not saying how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change. on TYT. Jen and Anna with you guys. Two fascinating stories, and then I'll tell you the personal one.
Well, let's talk about why the right wing is upset today. So, Fox's Dan Bongino had a sit-down interview with Donald Trump. That alone is pathetic. But apparently during that conversation, Trump had repeated lies about the 2020 election, which ended up getting cut out of the final interview that was posted on YouTube. Now, this upset Liz Harrington, who's a former RNC spokeswoman and a Trump loyalist. She also took a role in trying to help Trump delegitimize the results of the 2020 election. She's accusing Fox of censorship now. She tweeted, wow. So I went to post a clip from President Trump's great interview from Fox News last night, and lo and behold, Fox News edited and changed what President Trump said, censoring out 45, or Donald Trump accurately describing the fake election. Here's what President Trump actually said, and then she included the video that you're about to watch.
It's a disgrace what's happening, and I don't think the country's going to stand for it much longer. They're disgusted. You have a fake election. You have an election with voter abuse and with voter fraud like nobody's ever seen before. And based on that, and based on what happened, they're destroying our country. Whether it's at the border, whether it's on crime, I could say in plenty of instances, including military. You look at the leaders of military, the woke leaders of military. We have to focus on our great military for what it's supposed to be, to protect us against very powerful countries like Russia and China and others who don't exactly love us.
Military protect us against Russia. Wow. That was kind of surprising. So I apologize. Of course, it's not a sit-down interview. He called in to have this interview. But anyway, so now everyone's accusing Fox News of censorship. Dan Bongino is upset about this as well. He said the show was edited on YouTube, not on foxnews.com, and not during the live show. The reason I was given for why it was edited, the election part, was to comply with YouTube, and he says, that is not acceptable to me. Who cares what's acceptable for you, bro? Like who is Dan Bongino? How's Dan Bongino now like parading around as like someone who does the news? Like how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
Wasn't he like an NRA spokesperson?
Yeah, he's a propagandist. He was literally paid to do propaganda, and Fox News is like, oh, that's perfect.
Oh my God.
Okay, so So we won't get into how he rose up among the absurdities of the social media of the right wing. Anyways, so most important part of the story is the reason why they had to edit out that clip from YouTube, and is because you can't say things like that are untrue about the elections, and have the host let it stand. So this is good. This video is going to go on YouTube. So when they tell you that no, you couldn't show it at all on YouTube, that's actually not true. You can show it if you then explain what reality is. Reality is Donald Trump lost the election, and then he and his allies went to court 60 times. They lost every single case because they had no evidence. The problem for Bongino was he never challenged Trump on that. Of course not, because he's paid to do propaganda. He's not paid to actually do the news. So he just let Trump's complete and utter fabrications sit and didn't challenge it at all. That's why they had to edit it out. Look, Fox, so you've got a YouTube issue, but you mainly have a Fox News issue. Fox News is being sued to the tune of billions of dollars for these lies.
Yep.
And so they say, a tiny piece of the YouTube video, who cares? I got a couple of $1 billion that I got to worry about here. But Bongino's a knucklehead. I mean, he was hired to be a blockhead, so he's being a blockhead. So he's like, this is not acceptable, man. He put out another statement, and it's all the same stuff. It's not acceptable at all. I want to make that clear. This is not acceptable, meaning I won't accept it.
Well, what does that mean? Are you going to step down from your role over at Fox? Of course he's not. I mean, he's saying that because people are doing what they typically do with hosts, which is blame the host for everything. All the business decisions, that's the host's fault. All of the tagging and titling decisions, it's the host's fault. Like, I know, I'm being a little bit salty right now because everything is the host's fault. Tech issues, it's the host's fault. The host does everything. Everything in the company is done by the host. Anyway, but let me get that out of the way. Yeah, I know, it was a weird rant. But like, Anyway, there's multiple people doing multiple things in any given news organization. But with that said, Bongino is like worried about the backlash that he's experiencing, and also he wants to be in Trump's good graces.
Of course.
So he doesn't want Trump to think that he played a role or made the decision to edit or censor out the nonsense about the 2020 elections. And just to give you a little more detail into why Fox might be a little hesitant about airing that nonsense. The network is currently being sued by voting machine company Dominion Voting Systems for defamation. And to give you a specific figure, to Jake's point, the company is seeking $1.6 billion in damages. Dominion claims that Fox News personalities and guests spreading baseless claims and conspiracy theories about the company's voting equipment caused both reputational and severe economic damage to the company.
So I want to tell you something important. Truth is a defense for defamation. And so if Fox News actually thought the election was stolen, they would put that up on YouTube and their own channel all day long, because they know, oh, it's okay, we're gonna go to court, we're gonna present the evidence that the election was stolen, and then we're gonna win easily. I'm not worried about that $1.6 billion at all. Fox News gets sued all the time, they got a team of lawyers. It's no big deal for them if they think they're gonna win. The reason they're in a cold sweat panic is because they think they are not going to win, because they know that they were lying about it. And they know Trump is lying. Part of the reason they know is because they already went to court 60 times and they lost every time. And even Trump appointed lawyers said, you have no evidence at all of your charges. So that's why they edited it out. Now back to Bongino, he went on and said, meaning I won't accept it, and I promise you a definitive resolution that I'm working on now. Okay,
Come on.
Okay, it doesn't, look, you saying you don't accept it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
okay?
as my dad would say, who cares?
Right, so Anna's right, the only way that you won't accept it is if Fox News says, no, brother, you're not as important as $1.6 billion. And we're lying about it on air, and we're definitely gonna lose that lawsuit. So I'm not gonna let you make it worse by going out there and letting Trump lie. And of course, I mean, we pay you to be a bitch, to be honest, and just sit there and take whatever Trump tells you.
That's right, Mr. Tough Guy with your guns.
So and so, since we pay you to be a bitch, you're gonna continue to be a bitch, and you're not gonna do a goddamn thing about it. So your resolution is go take a long walk off a short dock, and you know what's gonna happen? And we're telling you ahead of time. Bongino is gonna tuck tail, and he's gonna put out some sort of, he's gonna hope that this thing blows over. He's gonna put out a false tough guy statement, but at the end of the day, he's gonna keep his job.
100%.
And he's not, you think he's gonna give up a lucrative job on Fox News, et cetera? What do you think, he's jank that he walk away for money at a cable news station? No way. So Bongino's gonna be like, oh, I told them who's who and what's what, and I gotta let them know about it. I'll see you next week on Fox News. That's what he's gonna do. Okay, so you know it. You're paid to be a bitch, so just be a bitch and move on with your life.
I got excited when you called him a bitch. Like it gave me a little bit of life, but then you referred to yourself in the third person.
I know, that did kind of.
Why'd you do that? Why'd you go there? All right, let's do this next story, which is insane. This story, why do people want to be Olympic athletes? It sounds like the worst thing in the world. Okay.
Well, look, in the old days, it was celebrated and everything was great. Now
it's awful.
Now, like being a celebrity in any way, shape, or form is horrible. I literally tried to talk my kids out of it. They're like, oh, I'm like, they want, because they're kids, like, oh, I want to be famous. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Sounds awful.
Anyway, go ahead.
Lock them in a basement, don't let them do it. Okay, so moving on. So, a former Polish sprinter is insisting that a Namibian Olympic runner has to prove that she is in fact a woman because she runs faster than he does. And he doesn't think that women can run that fast, you know? Certainly not faster than him.
Okay, don't be ridiculous. But this story gets funnier.
No, it's the most insane story. And I mean, just take the L, bro, and stop talking. But let's give you the details. So the woman, the Olympian that we're speaking of here is Christine Mboma. And she won the silver medal in the race. So she won silver at the 200-meter sprint in Tokyo on Monday. She was narrowly beaten to the gold medal by Jamaica's Elaine Thompson-Herah, who broke the world record for the women's 200 meters with a time of just 21.53 seconds, and that's 0.2 0.28 seconds faster than Mboma.
Okay, do you understand what he's saying? He's saying no woman could possibly be that fast, so I want her tested. She came in second. That's what a silver medal is. So obviously, the person who came in first is even faster.
And yes, and also a woman.
Also a woman, and
a woman's.
But when you're right wing, just logic need not apply. It's logic not required. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. For whatever reason, he thinks, and I guess it has to do with her age.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yes.
You can't possibly be that fast. So I declare, since you were all faster than me, I declare all of you non-women.
No, this is it's just so insane. So Marcin Urbas is who we're talking about here. That's the Polish sprinter, former Polish sprinter. And he's obsessed with this because apparently he's comparing his speed at the age of 18 to her speed now. And he's like, look, when I was that young, I wasn't that fast. And so since I wasn't that fast, there's no way she's a woman. There's no way she's a woman. Women can't run that fast.
Amazing.
And it is amazing. And like the most amazing part about it is how humiliating it is for the person doing the commentary right now. The former Polish sprinter who's like putting himself out there as like the biggest loser of all time. So he says that he couldn't believe that she was a woman because as an 18-year-old, she's running faster than he did when he was her age. The testosterone advantage, this is a quote from him. Her testosterone advantage over other participants is seen with the naked eye in construction movement technique at the same time as speed and endurance. She has the parameters of an 18-year-old boy. At that age, my personal best was 22.01 seconds, and she did it at 21.97 seconds in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So like he's just like, no, it's impossible. So he wants her to be tested to make sure she's a woman.
Yeah, no, this story is actually a perfect story of cognitive dissonance because he has a couple of thoughts in his head and he can't square them. One is that men are always faster than women. The other is this woman was faster than me, and I was a national sprinter of some acclaim in my country. So those two things don't match. So instead of him rejecting the original supposition, which is men are always faster than women, he instead rejects that she is a woman. Because he's got to get past that cognitive dissonance somehow. So, and by the way, this is a fairly common psychological phenomenon and explains a lot of right-wing thinking. Somebody just did it on TV last week. We were talking about it. They said, well, Trump won, what's your evidence? Oh, it was Mike Lindell. He said, and when the CNN reporter showed him all the evidence that he was not correct, he said, oh, that evidence doesn't matter because we all know Trump was gonna win. It's cognitive dissonance. I thought Trump was gonna win, but yet he didn't. So I have to either change my original supposition, which was that Trump was definitely gonna win. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that because psychologically it doesn't make me feel good. So instead I will change the fact, which is that Trump did not win.
Look, I get it. Sometimes life hits you like a ton of bricks, right? And then you got to readjust, right?
That's
New information means you have to readjust, not readjust whatever narrative makes you feel better about yourself. Fact of the matter is, homeboy, at the age of 18, she happens to be faster than you were at the age of 18, which might be the reason why you're a former sprinter that most people hadn't heard anything about until today, when you make a fool out of yourself by saying things like, quote, "It is clear and insolent injustice against women who are definitely women." He wants her to get tested because he suspects that she's not in fact a woman, and as a result, this is an injustice to women.
And actually, insolent is a really interesting word to use there. Like, how dare she? She's being insolent by beating male records. She's not allowed to do that, okay? We all had an agreement here that men were better than women, and she's violating that agreement. So we've got issues here. But guys, there's actually one more super interesting part of the story, which is how the human body is structured and the different advantages that other Olympic athletes have. So it is true that in some regions of the world, testosterone is slightly higher in some women. Now, there's some extreme cases. There's a bell curve. On average, we're all incredibly, incredibly similar. But when you're talking at the extreme end of the bell curve, that tiny bit of testosterone could make a difference and make them a little bit faster. And so that's not incorrect. But there's nothing wrong with that. They're not cheating. That's natural, and that's how their bodies are.
It's called Sad Day for You.
Yes, and so now people say, well, that's not fair. That's too much testosterone. Their body's built that way. But wait a minute, have you guys heard the story of Michael Phelps? So of course you know who he is, right? Or great majority of you do. He won 23 Olympic medals. He's a US swimmer. In fact, he won 23 gold medals, okay? So I knew some of this, but I didn't know all of it. So he has an abnormally large wingspan. Everybody knows that, you can see it, right? But most of the swimmers have abnormally large wingspan. So are we gonna say, no, your arms are too much. No, you're disqualified, you're not a real man, go away, okay? Yeah. Well, that's why it's like saying, well, no, Shaq should be disqualified from playing basketball, he's too tall. Yes, some people are better athletes because of their bodies, right? And so now, but back to Phelps, he has double jointed ankles that make for a more powerful paddle. That's a massive advantage in swimming, massive. He just happens to have this quirk in his body with a giant wingspan and double jointed ankles. It's no wonder he won 23 gold medals, right? And I had heard about the double jointed ankles before, but wait, it gets worse. This is the clincher that I had not heard before. He also has a lack of lactic acid production, which reduces fatigue.
Oh, God damn it.
That's not fair. So when he's swimming when no normal human being swims that fast, they get tired. They get really, really tired because of lactic acid. But his body doesn't produce that much lactic acid, so he doesn't get tired.
You know what? That's it. I mean, look, I can't swim as fast as Michael Phelps can.
That's it.
So
he's not a man.
I don't think that he's a human. I don't think he's human. Okay, this is an injustice to humanity. And so as a result, I want him to be tested to make sure he's a human.
That's right. I mean, the double jointed ankles is really weird.
Please
the
stop
lack
saying
of lactic
double
acid.
jointed ankles. It creeps me out for some reason.
I hear you. Okay, so lesson of the story is, yes, some athletes are really good because their bodies are structured to make them good athletes.
Right.
My body is not structured to be a good athlete. You don't see me crying like this Polish sprinter going, I want everybody tested. I want everybody eliminated until I get the gold medal. It's not how life works.
I just love the final thing for me. I love how this guy has these like Al Bundy-like nostalgic moments about his running career, and a woman threatening his record at the age of 18 like really throws him in a tizzy. He's like, no, can't have it. It's not a woman, not a woman.
Totally, I pictured him with his hand in his pants like Al Bundy and Married with Children. Going, no, I don't think she's a woman, man. Yeah, she's her body's too fast. I don't think we should let her run. I think you might be missing the point.
All right.
All right, okay, now the personal story. So, look, it's embarrassing. This is a little self-aggrandizing, okay?
Oh, you're embarrassed by that?
No, please. Come on, stop it. Okay. But there's theoretically a reason why I'm telling you. So in the show, one of you guys asked about, hey, why don't the Just Democrats like Cori Bush, et cetera, do a protest on the Capitol Hill steps about money in politics? And so I didn't have much time to get into it. That's why I kind of kicked it over here. Quickly on that, the reason why they would never do that, and the reason why money in politics is almost never discussed once somebody wins a race, is because once they get to Congress, I'm just keeping it super real with you guys. And notice I've been giving them a ton of credit for the wonderful things they did, including, of course, the eviction moratorium, which led to this conversation, right? But once they get into Congress, they're told that talking about money in politics is basically a third rail. They might not put it that way, but sometimes they even do, but because it's deeply offensive to 90% of their colleagues that take corporate money. And so if they did a protest about corporate money, they would at a minimum be implicitly calling out all of their Democratic friends and saying they're corrupt. And they're never gonna do that. And so, or at least that's the very last thing they're gonna do. I hope to God that they do it, right? And I hope we get enough momentum to get there. If I was all left, I'd say, I demand that vote today. And if they don't do it, then I hate them and they didn't come on my show. No, guys, we gotta, you know how much I care about money in politics. I think it's the key to, it's the Rosetta Stone. It's the key to everything, right? But I know what's realistic and not realistic. And we can work up to that, but it's gonna take us time. So we got to win on $15 minimum wage, then we got to win on infrastructure, and we're building leverage as we go. Now that Corey won an eviction moratorium, that $3.5 billion infrastructure/budget bill has a much better chance of passing because now they're worried that Corey might do something like that again, right? And when you've got enough of those wins stockpiled, then you could turn to money in politics because then you built up the leverage and the credibility to do it. That's smart strategy. It doesn't mean, oh, I don't want it. Are you crazy? Go join the Wolfpack right now. Wolf-pack.com/join, right? No, I want it more than anything in the world. In fact, I've told you, hey, here, Jimmy, everybody else, you can help, okay? Get it passed and I'll retire. Okay, and I've said that before, right? You can get rid of me by making sure we get a constitutional amendment, getting money out of politics. So we're going to build up.
What would he talk about if he got rid of you?
Oh, well, then he'd have to retire. So I guess that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, okay. So anyway, now to the personal part of me, how it affects me. So she did it on the steps of the Capitol. We did Democracy Spring on the steps of the Capitol. I forget the exact number, but I think it was over 1,200 people arrested overall. Largest act of civil disobedience in Capitol history. By the way, the credit mainly should go, first of all, credit goes to everybody who showed up. Okay, they all got arrested, right? Not all of them, thousands of people showed up, but that 1,200 that got arrested, that's amazing. You put your life on the line for that, right? So we love you for that. The person who gets the second most credit is the guy who organized it, Kai Newkirk. I did not organize it, Kai did. Kai did a brilliant job of organizing it. By the way, everybody gets character assassinated online. So I once heard a little blip about Kai, I hope he got past it, etc. But don't listen to crap, okay? Kai has been,
he's great,
amazing throughout. But they always find one thing about somebody and make you, for whatever reason, that Kai probably did a protest and that pissed off powerful people. They're like, let's dig. Oh, he did jaywalking in 1987. Progressives turn on him, right? No, Kai did amazing work on Democracy Spring, on many other projects. Okay, so he organizes it. There was other wonderful people. Ryan Clayton, who used to head Wolfpack at the time, he helped a lot. There was a lot of wonderful people that helped in that protest. So, but since I brought a lot of people out, I was among the leaders, and so everybody else got arrested first. We were on the first day, right? And so it took the whole day to like literally zip tie us, put us in a bus, get us to the police station, process us, etc. And so I was in the last 10 people arrested, okay? And then the way the processing worked, it just so happened that I don't remember if I was the very last person that came in to the holding facility or one of the last people, right? But at that point, they had processed everyone but me, and it was in an underground holding facility, which was a giant room, okay? But no one had been released yet, right? So there was, not all 1,200 got arrested on the first day, but I don't remember how many, 500, 800 people that are sitting there, right? And then you walk down a ramp. And when I walked down the ramp to get processed, I didn't expect anything. I was just gonna go fill out paperwork. And I didn't know what was down there because it's down below and there's no windows, right? And I walked down the ramp and they started chanting, Jang, 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 okay? And it was the greatest moment of my life, okay? And part of the reason I tell you that is because anytime I get attacked in mainstream media, which happens a lot, or by some wacko, right, left, whatever, right, online, I think of that moment and go, now, but it applies mainly to mainstream media more than the wackos, right? So when the powerful kick us, and the Clyburns, and also the politicians, right? The Clyburns and the Washington Post, etc. I think you'd be a jerk to value them more than the people that got arrested with you. And look, I do a talk show. My life was gonna be fine, okay? But what if that went on the record of some of those folks and it cost them jobs, right? Now, we knew it was administrative arrest and they were gonna be okay, otherwise we wouldn't have asked them to do it. But it's still, they don't know that as well as we know it. And Larry Lessig was our lawyer. He's the best lawyer in the country. So we wanted to protect those folks. But they didn't know that as well as we knew it. And they were taking a risk. And they came and they took time off. They came across the country. They did that, right? Now, I would be, in a sense, betraying them if I didn't value that moment more than I value anything that the goddamn Washington Post says, right? So, guys, we just gotta stick together. If we stick together, we're gonna win, because that is, so like, if we had Justice, I mean, I can tell you one more thing about that. If we had Justice Democrats in office at the time, which we didn't, okay? I told you in the show, and I've told you the story before, the only time we got press coverage, other than TYT, we covered it, we got millions of views on it, but it's just us, it's us against the world, right? There was maybe a couple other smaller outlets. Vice showed up one day, wrote some stupid snarky article about it, right? And then, but at the end, some press showed up because Rosario Dawson came. She's a celebrity, so they covered that and they took some pictures from a distance, etc. And they asked her and then ran away, okay? Now imagine if it wasn't just Rosario Dawson, and AOC came, and Cori Bush came, and Jamal Bowman came, and Marie Newman came. She's a Justice Democrat. Oh my God, some non-Justice Democrats came. Jamie Raskin came, right? Jamie Raskin cares deeply about money and politics, etc. And then all of a sudden, you would get tons of press coverage. And then, holy cow, the biggest act of civil disobedience in Capitol history. By the way, guys, I don't want you to get confused. The civil rights movement was so much more important, so much more impactful. It's just that we had more people arrested during one day and during 1 week than anybody else, okay? But if those people had showed up and you see all of them getting zip tied and moved in downstairs, it would have made a giant difference. It would have made all the difference in the world, okay? But all those people, you were there that day, whether it was gonna make a difference or not, you were earnestly trying. My point is, the next time that Cori does a protest, I don't wanna see 10 or 20 people there. I wanna see 200, I wanna see 2,000. So she gives us strength, so we give her strength. Let's do it both, like, be brave about it. I'm gonna ask you to be brave. And then let's be strategic on top and build up our power and our leverage until we actually get the things that we want. We can definitely do it, but we gotta stick together.
All right. Big Rick Energy follows the bonus episode today, so definitely enjoy that on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TYT. Big Rick Energy always brings the energy. It's literally in the title of the show, so check that out.
It does. So you're gonna go there now, and don't forget 7 o'clock is old school. Me and Mark Thompson tonight. You guys are gonna love it. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you. Oh, bye.